Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hotline League. We are back at our normal time and day for probably only 1 week. But it's happening, all right? It's back. We're going to talk about MSI, a tournament that nobody who watches this show actually watched, as judging by the YouTube viewership on any MSI content that I put out, especially Mark's Blame Game episode, most recent one.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck about that.
I saw you change the title. You copium changed the title after a couple hours, and then it was
Did
still.
I?
Yeah, I think you did. I'm pretty sure you did.
What did you do?
I didn't
I don't
change the
think I
title, and I thought the title got changed. So
I don't think I did. I think I might have had a typo in there. What was it?
I don't know. Whatever. Regardless,
Craps or claps and T1's Baron throws. No, that's what it's been
that's
the whole
what it was
time.
for the beginning.
Okay.
Well, I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know. Either way, maybe we should have changed the title. Regardless.
Yeah, maybe we should. No one gave a fuck about that
Hey,
episode.
People have moved on from caps. It's not about that anymore. It's about blue side.
I put it out 4 days ago. I put it out.
Guys, the moment I know that I'm on red side, we're instantly FFing. There's
There
no
it is.
use of playing. That's what Carrier thought too when he just inted his ass off bot lane. He's like, no, it doesn't matter. I'm just not going. CC me, Rakan. Just kill me right now. We're on blue side. We're on red side.
Well, your
me-
mouse stops working on red side.
Let me
Oh, that's
introduce
true.
some people.
That's
So first
true.
off, my constant co-host Mark Zimmerman is here. How's it going, Mark?
It's good.
Where were you? You were just vacationing.
I was in Big Bear.
Wow.
Big Bear
Big
Lake.
Bear. Ooh.
It's
Very-
fucking post-apocalyptic. It's drying out. There's like all these waterfront properties that have like steps that are supposed to go down to the water, but there's no fucking water there anymore. It just goes into grassland that then you have to walk 100 yards to get to any fucking water. It's depressing to look at.
The drought has struck. Yeah. It's funny too. There's up there. There's a couple bridges that are supposed to cut through the water, and then actually
Yeah.
you drive over the bridge and you're just surrounded by dirt on either side.
Yeah.
The lake is gone. It's no longer going to be Big Bear Lake. It's just going to be Big Bear.
Wow, that's tragic.
Yeah. It's welcome to Los Angeles. Did somebody's washing
Vibrator go
Laundry's ready.
off.
Anyone want to get my laundry?
Dear God. Okay. Anyway. What else have you been up to, Mark? Anything else?
We went hiking. I got a sunburn. There was a bald eagle in the area apparently, so they didn't do fireworks. They did a drone show, and it was the fucking lamest thing I've seen. Like they just like go into formation and just spin while like you can tune your radio to listen to like some American fucking music as it's like a flag and then like a picture of California and then like an eagle. You know, it's just like so
that's tragic.
fucking lame compared to fireworks.
I mean,
that
listen,
bald
we're
eagle.
in such a huge drought that I don't know if we should be setting off fireworks in the middle of a.
Fuck the forest and fuck that eagle. I want my goddamn fireworks for Memorial Day.
I just want to be clear here that the views and opinions expressed by Mark Zimmerman on the show do not represent those of Hotline League or any brands that work with us. Anyway,
I would have
next,
joined if there was a Canadian flag.
I wanted to give Mark a whole lot of stuff to talk about, but he's now sacrificed his moment. Okay, Raz, welcome to the show. It's been a bit.
Hey.
How you been?
I've been good. Watched MSI. Hey, I'm actually having a proper sleep schedule because trying to attempt, which is redundant, attempting to watch MSI while in North America, I've realized since coming to from Berlin is horrendous. It's a bad
Yep.
decision.
Welcome to every international event for the past half a decade for
Guys,
North
NA
America.
just doesn't seem to care about these events. I don't understand why they don't wake up at 2 a.m. in the morning to watch until 11 and then just sleep the whole fucking day. Like, what's wrong with these?
That's
That's
what's
crazy.
that is what's so funny to me about the huge sentiment of like, guys, North American viewership is going down the drain because we don't watch because we don't win any international events. So I'm like, you guys, like nobody's watching this. Like NA fans are not affected by it because they don't
crazy.
watch. You know what I mean? I'm like,
You gotta.
it's
People
so
care
funny to me.
so much about having, proving grounds and champions queue. No, what we need to do is just be nocturnal creatures. That when an international event rolls by, that we can just have a watch party, I guess in a fucking cave. I don't know, somewhere. Just like at some point. So we can follow the team throughout the event. I think that would be the best decision.
I tweeted something that popped off a little bit where I said after EG went out, I said the saddest thing about the MSI is that it's international event number 1 million, where the games are unwatchable for most NA fans, so people will just see the scorelines and not realize EG actually looked much improved for most NA international appearances. And we could talk about that on the show in a little bit, but it was just funny to me the amount of people that replied, and they're like, "Oh wow," as if like they should cater the viewership to you guys, or like there's been all sorts of stuff, you know, that has been good for NA viewership and all this stuff. I'm just like, guys, no, you should honestly go look at the amount of like MSIs and worlds in the past several years, where like you look at the hours, and especially on the West Coast, it's like that shit starts at like 1 or 2, and is
I don't know the
like
last
7.
I don't know the last international event I did need to fuck up my sleep schedule for.
Yeah.
Like to the point where for Ashley and I, like we just know twice a year I'm going to be nocturnal.
Yeah.
And I think we've been dating for 5 years now. So like, yeah, it's been probably at least 10 events, because I think it's been literally every international event I've had to go nocturnal, and then like, all right, I'll see you at 8:00 tonight.
I think the only time I was actually living a reasonable schedule was when I was living in China. So that says a lot.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
That says a lot.
Yes. I think so that's the thing, is I just go back to like, people are like, "Oh man, NA fans are just so tired of watching our teams lose internationally." I'm like, they're not watching our teams.
We're just
lose
tired.
internationally. They're
You were
asleep.
just tired because it's 2 a.m.
It's just so funny. Anyway, what else have you been doing, Raz? You created some content. Do you want to mention it so that people can?
Yeah. So kind of the idea behind it is I'm making just some, quote unquote regular piece of content called R&R, which is Raz in Review. The idea of it is definitely not blame game. In fact, it is kind of just focusing on positive, bits, ideas, concepts that teams do. Like the last thing was just vision control, that I think it was G2, their defensive vision control. And generally speaking, I'll just like try and find specific things that a team does really well and just kind of highlight it. It's supposed to generally be like 5 minutes long, because people just have pea brains and do not watch anything longer. They can, but I think just for me, short pieces of content just to support kind of players and teams is a great idea. And also it's just a fun way of learning a few things. Like I've always kind of tinkered with like Adobe softwares, and for me it's just a fun way of like being like, okay, I can learn this a little bit, and then if I want to do this more consistently, then I can actually have a video editor. But for now, it's been something that I've been throwing in.
I do appreciate
while
that.
watching MSI.
Instead of doing blame game, you chose R&R, which has the same initials as Rift Reaction and Resin Refresh.
Rift Reaction.
No, but
that?
it's RNR. You can't just ignore a letter and call it the same acronym.
What the heck? Also, what is R&R? I mean, what is RR? You're just talking about a show called RR. That's awful. Whoever made that name.
Wait. You're gonna tell me you have not seen the Rift Reaction podcast callouts on the main broadcast that that Travis has paid Riot for? Travis paid Riot for those shoutouts on the broadcast.
People
You're
will
paying
actually
them out of your pocket?
People will actually believe that, Mark. Listen, guys.
Okay, good.
Riot needs as much financial support as they can, and if I, with my massive media company, Travis Gafford Industries, can support Riot Games esports. Because I don't know if you guys saw the fucking venue that they made for MSI, but it's clear that they've got some budget issues over there. So I am more than happy to provide some financial compensation to them to support their grassroots esports initiatives.
Travis, where is that video? You didn't put it out, did you?
No, I did not put it out. I didn't put it out because by the time the they kind of made some improvements for the semifinals and finals. Like it certainly looked better, and they were actually doing crowd shots and stuff. But
yeah,
it's hard for me to figure out. Like I don't know enough to know if it was very Busan library in the finals, or if that was just continued audio mixing issues.
Kind of sounded like that to me. I don't know.
It definitely sounded like a library at points.
Yeah, I don't know.
You can even see the reaction on their faces.
My favorite was when the confetti started falling and only T1 was on stage, and there was no one there to celebrate. And RNG is just at home lifting another MSI trophy, and T1 people are like, how'd they get the trophy there? And it's their own trophy that they have from last year. I don't know. There's a lot of
There's a
great
lot that's
moments.
happening there. There's a
Yeah.
lot happening. I feel bad for the people in production who are trying to find a camera shot of anyone that was excited. Okay, we can't find T1 players. Hell no. Okay, T1 fans in the nothing. There's a section over there in the arena where RNG fans are. Let's immediately go there because we're not gonna go to the RNG like facility for a while.
Just show the stage.
show city shots. Oh, Korea. I don't know.
By the way, I want to make sure I don't forget before we start talking about MSI officially to shout out Alienware and Grubhub for sponsoring the show. We'll talk more about them later. But all right, this is a good moment to ask because we had a pretty good Rumble stage, right? And we still had the conversation about okay, Rumble stage does not save this format, et cetera, but after group stage, before we had that show, we had a show where we were talking about this might be the worst League of Legends esports events in memory and in recent years at the very least. And so I want to find out from you guys, like, do you still feel that way? Because I kind of still feel that way.
So I think I made this very clear on Twitter for everyone that was having a knee-jerk reaction off of the first group stage. First group stage has always been dog shit. Like it's literally never been good. The only bad thing about it is that they slapped this is now MSI, and rather than saying this is IWCQ or this is play-ins or whatever, and they added all the big teams there. But yes, it was extra bad because of the tech issues and all the drama that came from it, the lack of transparency. There's a lot that I felt that I hated about it. I think it got significantly better, obviously, but compared to every other MSI, it's actually just been worse because there is no competition in the semifinals.
Yeah,
well, I don't just mean from the competitive side, Raz, but like, what do you think about? Like you came in towards the tail end of Hotline League last week, where we had the caller that called in who was like, actually the event kind of sucks in person. They obviously had all the technical issues, et cetera, et cetera. I know you were teasing Mark about not wanting to throw Riot under the bus last week's episode, but I just mean like I think across the board this event was played with so many issues, many of them outside of Riot's control, but in some cases within Riot's control, and I don't know. It's hard to look back at this MSI and be like, woo.
I'm gonna say this last bit, and I want to hear from Mark. Like, I usually just rate events with fans much higher than the no-show events in Iceland. No-show events of Iceland just have no energy. They're trying to they will always overcompensate by having like amazing, I'll just say CGI because I don't remember, AR like stage, so the stage becomes a bigger attraction and focus, but there's just no energy because there's no fans and everything, and you're bowing to nobody. So like for me, that always blows. So I think it could be slightly better than that, but the competitive side is the worst I've seen.
I'm somewhat on the same page. I think the problem with this compared to some of those ones is while it did have a crowd, you had to deal with the whole like ping problem and then like the remake of the games and all that stuff casts a larger shadow on it as well, and having to remake those. So like the ones in Iceland where there was no crowd, I was like, hey, at least we got an event, I guess, whereas this one I felt more disappointed with. I also, people meme about the crowd not lending a ton of energy. I think the crowd was still good to have. I didn't really have too much of a problem with it, but I think for a long period of time we got so spoiled that like from 2012 through 19, it was just all dubs for like, or not all dubs, but like mostly every event was good. Even if you had format complaints back then, which fair enough, but like at least there were usually no other like bigger issues surrounding them.
I know you guys were talking about it last episode or so, just about of the audience mics being kind of more muted, and I've always hated that. Like, if the casters and all are not going to be in venue, I would rather deal with the problem of the audience being too loud than I would be of them not having any voice at all. Like, that one's easier for me to kind of handle as a fan, where you can just be like, okay, just turn it down a little bit or turn it down a little bit, rather than being like, oh, we just hear nothing. The energy of it is just completely gone. Like, for me, audience participation has always been what made good games. That's what made playoffs, as huge as it was, is when you can hear the fans just boom through the mics. That's something that was hard. Like I just think that was probably the biggest miss, because players were saying, "Hey, it's not really a what's it called?" Even Peter on Twitter, Peter Dunn was saying that it's not a library unless if RNG is playing, like they're cheering for every other team, but apparently we're just not catching it. So that's what really blows.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm a little disappointed. I'm a little disappointed in the event execution. Like, quite frankly, I feel like, given, I see what you mean, Raz, about like, wow, there were fans here. That was great.
Yeah.
I just think I feel like Riot executed in both situations. They had different levels of constraints. I think given the constraints they both have, like whenever you control for both of those, this MSI was really a big step down from the last couple, and from like Iceland's. Well, I shouldn't say last couple because there was the 2021, right? But the Worlds and the MSI stuff that we've seen recently. I don't know. It was surprising to me, and I continue to really feel like it's not. I'm just so tired of these like remote broadcasts. You feel it, right? Like Kobe and Dracos at one point in time were casting. I think it was in the Rumble stage, and they were both just talking about how sleep deprived they are, and I'm like, yeah, just that's not a great way of doing this. Like actually send your folks to the event so that they can like tell the stories of like, oh, I ran into so and so behind the scenes last night, and like they were having this conversation and whatever. It's just it's a very different vibe, and I know they've been doing this for a while, and I know me complaining about it again is not going to change it, but I don't know. I'd love to see them really step up for Worlds. So we'll see. All right. What else is there to talk about, folks, besides MSI? We'll take calls about MSI. I know that's probably going to be the majority of this, but we haven't really spent too much time on LCS roster changes recently. Raz, do you have something?
I was about to say LCS rosters because I'm sure you guys will be talking about it in the next few weeks going into the LCS, but it's nice to just start talking about some of the announcements.
Yeah, I don't remember any of them, to be honest.
So the announcements technically happened during MSI, so they didn't get much traction. But like, you can talk about Kenby coming into IMT, which is a big one. Lost in Ignar also in IMT, so that's a really big.
I do want to do a call out where I'm kind of disappointed in Golden Guardians. Golden Guardians, they're doing the coaches back to competition type thing, which I find. Usually, I felt like Golden Guardians did a really good job of running a team, like a lower half team, in a pretty impressive way, and this feels very CLG-ish or something. You know what I mean? Like it's just let's bring in people who've played for a long time, who've stopped playing, and we're going to coach, and now they're back competing again, and I think that's a little disappointing.
If we have a call, we can get in deeper on that one, but I have a point on that one just generally.
Sure.
Like I think veteran players, we always go back to it, but veteran players are probably the ones that have the best form of development in front of them. That it tends to die out when they lose passion for the game or competition in one way, shape, or form. But a lot of the times when meta changes, or just like when any huge change comes at them, they generally will be the ones that are on top because they've been in the system for a while. And Stixay like killed Academy. He didn't expect to be in Academy, I'm sure, because he was expecting to coach, but him and Chime just like ran Academy up until he left, and then Violet came in, and then whatever happened. So if they legitimately believe that he's a player that who's playing really fucking well, which he is, but also can develop and learn, like who's to say that he can't still learn? I don't even know how old he is.
I mean, they ran him previously. Like, that's the thing that's kind of weird to me is, like, it's not like Stixay hasn't competed on that team before. And personally, I really like Stixay as an individual.
25 years old.
And so it's tough whenever I don't want to be like, oh, get this washed player out of there. But it's just, it feels very antithetical to, like, the Golden Guardians moves that have happened before. I was wrong about Huhi for Golden Guardians previously, and so maybe I'll be wrong here, but I'm like, really? This is what we're doing now? I don't know. I just think it's a little disappointing.
Yeah, he's 25. I still think there are going to be times in which a player is staggering or like, not really finding that level of development. But I feel like we'll always see. We'll see. So like
Yeah.
that's 100%. I think the weirdest one for me is kind of what's happening in their academy side plus their main side. Like they brought in leader, and Acadian came back into the jungle. So it kind of feels as though there might be at some point in the split like a change up, because leader and Prize Soccer, I'm pretty sure, are friends. So like it's to me that's interesting to look into as the split goes on.
Yeah, Olive sweating, I think.
Mhm.
And then I guess we
Drive.
have the
It's one or the
TSM
other.
investigate. TSM has released the results of their own investigation.
Yep. Give me that one. Someone has to come in with a call of that one.
There is someone who has a take roughly about it, but I can't add them to the waiting room because they're not. All right, whatever.
Someone has to come in with the TSM call. If there's not one person that comes in,
I mean, we
with
should
the
have
TSM
one,
call,
but I also am kind of like, what is there to say? Like, anybody who expected TSM to come out and be like, we investigated ourselves and we fired Regi, I don't think that was ever going to happen.
yeah, there's
So-
not much to say about it, but like if someone has a
it's
take, then
it is
we'll
funny.
take
And
it.
apparently they released like the stuff about their coach Peter on the same day, and the way they
That one
released it,
I-
I think was very funny. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't end up wanting to read that one because we kind of already knew where that was going, and it was timed in a perfect way to get a heat off of Regi. So it was literally like 15 or so minutes.
It's
in-
just it's
after the
so
fact.
fucking esports. The fact that it came out as a twit logger, like
Yeah.
I'm like, I remember railing against twit longer like 5 years ago, and just being like, esports teams need to stop doing that. And then for a while, teams started using Medium or their own posts or like a
Look.
text post to Twitter, which even then I don't think is great. But like the fact
Here's
that
the fun.
we're
Yeah, go on.
Reggie's like, oh, the accusations of my fucking bullying and abusive leadership and management. Here's my fucking twit longer. I'm just like, wow. This is where
Yeah,
we're
the
at.
funniest thing was that, yeah, sure, Twit longer, very esports on his account.
I know.
You have a TSM like website. You have a TSM account that's been like pushing this stuff about roster decisions and any larger decisions. Like, but you're like, yeah, they investigated me. Here's the result of the investigation.
All right.
On my account, on my Twit longer. I was like, what the? It was like, please make an attempt. Make an attempt to. It's so crazy, bro.
So I heard an explanation on Reddit that like made sense to me. Not that it makes anyone feel better.
It's like they don't want to call attention to it type thing.
Yeah, it's like you don't want to put something like this on your actual fucking website because like sponsors and people will care about that. Putting on your twit longer can potentially make it sound more personable than like a corporate write-up, and this way, like, you know, it's not actually on your website anywhere. It's just on their personal channel, so it's like less official from the company that like our owner, he didn't do anything illegal. Ayo, you know, like that.
Yeah.
So I
think
saw
it's a
that
way-
explanation too.
It doesn't make it feel any better, but I think I can see why companies would do that.
I understand
I
the
think
strategy.
I think the last thing we want is something personable to Regi. If it's personable to TSM, then put it on the TSM Twitter account rather than it being personable to Regi saying, "Yeah, guys, I'm trying to make it so it's seen as I had no impact on the investigation. So I'm going to present the investigation on a twit longer."
Yeah. So that's why I agree. So I see both of this, right? Mark, I agree. This is the strategic play, but it's only the strategic play while fans accept that level of behavior. You know what I mean? Like, I think fans should be able to push back and say, like, how can you pretend that this is a TSM corporate investigation when TSM is not the one presenting the results? It's the person being investigated, you know?
I feel like this kind of move makes a lot more sense when your company doesn't rely on fans. Like if you make if you're a software company,
Yeah.
you know, like if he just had Blitz, I don't think it would fucking matter because no one's going to be like, oh, I'm a fan of Blitz. It's like, no, you use their product, right? But like TSM fans are TSM fans of the team and he's a part of the team. You know, like I just don't think it plays as well, to your point, Travis, in a setting like this.
Like even, I think, and maybe like you don't get to control the narrative as much, but I think there's even a world where you like go back to Washington Post and you say like, hey, here's our information, or another media outlet, and you say like, hey, here's the results of our investigation. You can publish them and do whatever you need to. And then there's like kind of a third party handling it that's both not the person who's being investigated and also not the company itself. But I don't know. I just felt it's.
I don't know someone needs to be in that room when they're talking about the final, like, basically points of the investigation and how it needs to be publicized. I know they've lost a whole bunch of people. I know they lost,
You think anyone but Regi was in that room?
So it's like, just yes, Regi and his yes men. That's what it is. So it's tragic. It's tragic.
Okay, so I think, is there anything else? Obviously, there's a whole bunch of MSI stuff. How are we looking on topics, Mark? You've pulled some people.
I've pulled some people. I think we'll be able to wring half a show out of this.
Okay. Great.
The other half,
you're really
resin
hyped.
refresh.
That's how we retain viewers. Okay. Mark, you want to go grab the first caller?
And he's already gone.
He's already gone. All right. Thank you to ZD Wilson, ProStar, Zemelkai, Immortal Scrub, Snowy Phantom, Fast Ghost Blast, and Quiet Pirate for all of your subs. Thank you, folks. We're rebuilt. I know I say this every show, but we lost almost half of our subs over the course of MSI. People in North America just don't give a shit about MSI. Next year, I should not cover it.
I don't know about that one. That's not it. What do you?
I mean, you say it, but like it's wild to me. Like all of Mark and my content on the channel just hard dipped.
You know what you need to do? You need to learn Chinese.
I mean, I've had people say that. Okay.
That's what we're doing. Genshin yes. And LPL are our new favorites.
Yes, exactly. Is it Aiainz? Is that how you say your name, caller?
Pretty much.
Aiainz, where are you calling from?
Orange County.
Orange County, and you've been on previously, right?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, what do you want to talk about on the show?
Okay, so my take for today is that I think that none of the teams that made top 4 at MSI will end up winning Summer because they played on a pre-durability patch game for a longer period of time than every other team, just because their tournament runs were very long since they made top 4, and also that generally leads to a slump after MSI. Like most of the teams that play at MSI generally have a slower start in the summer, and I think that will mean that they will start way farther behind than every other team, especially the ones that are boot camping before the split.
Honestly, great take. I mean, it's not so. One, I know obviously everybody's talked about that post MSI slump, but part of the reason I'm happy you brought this up is because there is some conversation to be had around Danny and his tweet that came out immediately afterwards, where he said, like, I'm honestly just happy it's done, and then like a bunch of people came out of the woodwork to flame him for having a bad attitude or whatever. Then he talked about how painful and grueling the schedule has been and how little time they have. And I did an interview with Vulcan that'll be coming out tomorrow, where he talked about this too, where it's just like they, especially North America, there was a tiny amount of gap because we had the latest spring finals before MSI started. So then you have to go over there, get ready. Then you've got, all these weeks of MSI. And now, LCS starts in a very short time. People have to come back, figure the stuff out. So I think this is super true, at least of EG. I think they're going to struggle a long time. I don't know if it means they won't be able to win LCS, but Raz,
so
what do you think?
The take was that none of the teams that got top 4 win this summer split, or just specifically EG?
Yeah, none of the MSI teams win summer.
Yeah, I think that all of the top 4 at MSI, because they had a very long tournament run, that because there's such a short amount of time between the end of MSI, like the playoffs, and the start of spring split for their regions, that they're going to have a much shorter amount of time to get used to the durability patch, which is like a huge change to the game. And so they will start a lot farther behind than a lot of other teams that are preparing for the split for like maybe months during boot camps.
The durability patch just hit relatively recently, though, right? Was it last week?
Yeah, but it's not just the durability patch. I think that a lot of the champs that are good on the durability patch, like Olaf or Talia, also got their reworks after 12.8, which is the MSI patch. So like Talia was on 12.9, I think. So they will have less time to get used to like those reworks as well.
All right.
Minor thing before we hop into this take. Someone else had a take that EG wasn't going to make Worlds in summer, and that they only made Worlds because that lucky Baron steal, and if they didn't get that, they wouldn't have even, or excuse me, MSI, they wouldn't have even made MSI without that lucky TL Baron steal. And like some people are like,
they don't make worlds. Is that what that was?
No, they wouldn't have made worlds, but they also wouldn't have even made MSI if not for that lucky Baron steal. And I didn't take that one because sometimes people say you just take the easiest calls to slam dunk as opposed to a more reasonable one like this. So I took the more reasonable one of the two about EG not doing well in summer, arguably. And now this person is raging in chat that I didn't take it. And it's like, you're just damned if you do, damned if you don't. You take the hot takes people say, you know, oh, you're fucking trolling. You take the reasonable takes. Oh, it's so boring. What a lame take. Go fuck yourselves, everyone. How about that?
I mean,
Travis, he's acting out. What are you going to do about it?
Probably close to 250 episodes at this point in time, Mark. That's always been the way it is. And then
the
there'll be
funniest
Reddit
thing
comments talking about how boring our calls are. Anyway,
the person raging in chat also dropped a KYS at someone else, so clearly I made the right call with this caller instead.
Yeah.
Wait, you actually did?
Yeah.
Feel free to boot them from the Discord. Anyway.
No. They're nice people, I'm sure. I'm sure they're upset.
I'm sure.
I'm sure they're just upset they didn't get taken for their call. I'm sure.
I'm not sure if that's acceptable behavior regardless. Anyway.
And he responds, a swift death threat.
Okay. Back to this, which is how screwed are these teams? I mean, I guess, caller, the real question here is like, do they have enough time to recover, right? Like to catch up over the course of the next couple of months, because I mean, summer playoffs is quite a ways away. So I'm sure, I don't think it's that crazy to think that they're going to be slumping, but I think the question is whether or not they can recover. And I guess I'll turn to Mark and Raz to ask, because I don't remember exactly, but there's been historically large patches around MSI time and teams have recovered in time for Worlds, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of times that the team who won MSI makes Worlds. In fact, it's only a single time they haven't made Worlds, because Cadrill had a tweet about how shit it is for teams who win spring to then have to go play summer. And it's pretty rare that they win summer, but it's also pretty rare that they just completely miss Worlds as well. I think I could only find, I think I remember looking into it, and I only found one team that didn't make Worlds
one
after.
team that maybe they actually won out in champions points. Let me see if I won out in champions points in regionals. No, they for sure came in regions. So
yeah,
go on.
Oh no, I was gonna say the same thing. Yeah, RNG last year I think made it through like the gauntlet runs. There's been a fair amount of gauntlet runs that were required.
Yeah, they made it through a gauntlet, but it was really tough for them. And like they went to MSI, won don't remember that one. But
yeah, they won MSI last year.
Mm-hmm. So like they won MSI, and then in the first 4 to 5 weeks of the LPL split, they went 1 in 5. Like they hard struggled because there was just there's no time in between spring, MSI and actual summer split. A lot of teams, of course, went through that slump for good reasons. But it was a bit of a struggle, but they went through in gauntlet. So that's kind of like my answer on this one, is that I don't agree with the caller in that all 4 teams will not win their championships, just because I think there's actually just quite a large gap for T1 and the second team, Gen G. So I actually think in Korea it's pretty top heavy. Gen G can challenge them, but it's very, very difficult. Even if they went through the full split without the whole COVID catastrophe that the LCK was having. Dom 1 did change, but I also think that's going to be a harder run for them because Nuggery had time off. So yeah, maybe there's now competition, but I would still deem T1 to win the championship. RNG is a tough one, but seeing the finals in the LPL, I think RNG is just a team that is a lot more cool, calm, and collected. Well, some of those teams will just throw everything, all their advantage away, even if they have more mechanically talented players. EG, I don't think EG will win in summer for a combination of reasons, but and I don't think G2 will win either. I actually didn't think G2 would win this time around. I had more faith in Fnatic and Rogue, but here we are. So I think T1 would be the LR.
You copy pasted what I was going to say too. It's the same thing for me. I think EG and G2, while incredible, also had like these insane runs through losers. So even though they 3-0'd the finals, I don't think it was actually like just raw dominance of their competition. So I expect them to struggle a lot more. I think to Travis's point about the rest as well, the problem is like you come back, and if you don't play right away, then you're just the furthest behind in the meta. but maybe well rested. But if you scrim right away, you can maybe catch up in the meta, but then you're going to be like super fucking tired. So no matter what you do, there's no way to be like properly adjusted for the start of summer.
You absolutely need to rest your players. Like I think
I think
any
that's the right
team-
one too.
Yeah, any team that tries to just say no, we're going back straight into scrimming and we're going to go into summer split, you're just ruining your team when it comes to playoffs or when it comes to worlds. Like it's not a good decision. So there needs to be a better place or strategy from the league side to make it so teams at least have some rest, either postpone the season itself or give some of the teams like that won championships some time off. One or the other, because it sucks. But to the caller's point, the split is long. So it just does not matter what happens in the first 4 weeks, especially in the LCS, where 8 teams go into the playoffs. No, like it doesn't matter if you just ransack your first 5 weeks. Like you're still gonna get into playoffs, and a team like EG will still be able to make it into a top 4 position in the winners bracket. Like I didn't think they would win unless if something crazy happens. Like I don't think they're gonna win the championship regardless. But I just think that's a case of competition in the league.
I think the one thing to talk about just back on the NA side is like the good news for EG is that C9 kind of roster blew up, and so they're gonna have to be getting their feet underneath them, and then like TL and 100T are interesting in that I don't know, like they both seem to have issues that I don't know how easily they're going to be able to solve between spring and summer. And so I actually still think that even if EG have like a rough couple of weeks in the very beginning, like they can and should be pretty competitive because C9's also got to play catch up. And then again, like TL and 100T, I don't know. Those teams are just... It's really interesting for me to wonder how they're both going to look in summer because I just feel like they both have to figure out like kind of existential crisis issues for their rosters as a whole. Mark, are you trolling people in the Discord?
Not
chat?
not me ever.
Oh yeah,
No,
he
no,
wouldn't
no.
do that.
All right.
No.
Well,
Doesn't sound
Aiainz,
like
I
it.
don't know if there's anything else, or if we've missed anything that you wanted us to hit on, but it seems like there's kind of mixed reception to your take.
Yeah, for the only thing that I would probably add is that I think that historically LPL has a lot of like variance, so I wouldn't be super certain that RNG would win again, just because there's a lot of shakeup in like the power level of LPL. Like, it's pretty rare for a team to win like summer and spring in LPL, I think, in recent years. So that was part of my take. I think for the LCK, I just thought that T1 showed a lot more weakness at MSI than they did during spring, and that may cause them to like try to re-examine how they play, which could set them even farther behind at the beginning of the split. To try
Yeah.
to like fix the problems that these showed.
That's why I think that would be more of the reason rather than durability or the durability patch or even just the time in between spring and summer. I think the time I see same during spring and summer. The time between the event MSI and the actual summer split to begin with. Sure, every one of those teams are going to have a bad first few weeks because they're going to take breaks, and every other team is kind of searching the meta, which the big changes, and they're going to come to those conclusions much faster than EG, T1, RNG. But those leagues are just competitive. LCS is really competitive this time around, so we're not going to have a case in which like Team Liquid went to an event and they're going to come back and everyone just kind of expects them to win the split again. I like we have 4 teams that could have a good split and can make you actually believe that they would win. Like this time around, we had 3 teams in finals weekend that we all kind of you could come to a conclusion that they would win, right? So I just think it's more of a competition because all those teams will come to like they'll learn and will get back into the thick of things when it comes to playoffs.
The other thing I'd throw in too is I don't know if T1 got exposed more than they did regionally. Like they dropped some games and series before. They've dropped like the undefeated thing. I think tricked a bunch of people into thinking they hadn't lost at all, like any games during the regular season. They lost a bunch, and like that happened here. they absolutely shit on G2, and then they had a really close series versus RNG. You know, like I don't think that I agree that they might take some things and experiment a little bit more in summer. But I don't think that they showed a lower level than they did domestically. I think they just had tougher competition here.
Well, thank you so much, Aiainz, for the call. Anything you want to shout out before we take a quick break?
I guess I'll shout out IMT. I think they'll actually be really good in the summer, and I hope that they make top 4 and contest for Worlds.
IMT, you said? Immortals?
Yeah.
Really quickly, why do you think that? I'm curious.
I think that the pickup of Lost is kind of underrated. I think that he is like maligned a lot more than what he probably deserves from the community, and also I think that the Kenby pickup was really underrated, and it kind of went under the radar for the offseason because of other things like the Jensen pickup.
Well, I wish you had called in with this take. I like this one more than I like the other one. That's very interesting. Regardless, I guess we'll have to find out. So thank you, Aiainz, for the call, and we'll catch you next time. All right. We're going to take a quick break right now to talk about our first sponsor of the night, which is Alienware. Thank you to Alienware for sponsoring so much of what we do here. Fantastic products that they make. We love Alienware. You can go check out their products. I think they might still have a sale going on right now. Let me just see. If you're watching live, head over to alienware.com because you might be able to check some deals on their site. Regardless, they make some fantastic stuff, including this beautiful, I know you guys have heard me talk about it before, this beautiful 34-inch QD OLED monitor. It's been getting rave reviews. People keep getting their hands on it, reviewing it, talking about how it's a game changer in the space right now, and it's fantastic. I love having it and playing with it. It is so cool for a variety of different purposes. Even if you're a creative, you should take a look into this because there's some fantastic aspects of it for creatives as well in terms of just color reproduction, etc. But beautiful, beautiful monitor for playing games regardless. So thank you so much to Alienware for sponsoring the show. We really appreciate them. They make wonderful things happen for us. And we'll have some cool Alienware stuff coming up soon. All right. Raz is AFK. Oh, he's coming back. Mark is off to grab the next caller. Thank you to Quiet Pirate for the 29 months. Riot Wafflefoot. Land7J2 gifted a sub. Wafflefoot with the 10 gifted subs. Thank you so much. Anonymous. Le Crusette. Fart Master Blaster. Oh my God, Joseph Joestar. And Shiny Froky. Thank you, everybody, for the subs. Softie is here. Softie, where are you calling from?
Especially Fart Master Blaster. Go on.
Softie, where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm calling from Pasadena in California.
Pasadena. Hey, not too far away. How's Pasadena these days? I haven't been over there in a bit.
Pretty good. I moved here less than a year ago, so I'm hoping to go and see LCS once they're letting a lot of crowds back in.
They are letting crowds back in. You missed it.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to get playoff tickets, so hopefully when Summer Split starts.
Yeah, hopefully they've got. They haven't said anything about if they're gonna have an audience in for summer, but I assume so. I don't know.
Hey, all I know is they're having audience in for that collegiate event for collegiate finals, top 8. So that to me, that's a positive indicator.
Well, here's hoping. I'm crossing my fingers.
Yeah. Regardless, what do you want to talk about on the show, Softie?
Yeah. So my take is that TSM won't be a good org until Regi leaves or drastically changes, and I can elaborate. If we look back in the past, ESM's success came a lot from being one of the first big teams on the scene, alongside others like CLG, and in an evolving esports ecosystem, where not a lot of kind of management styles are very set in stone or things like that. They were able to kind of establish themselves really well, even through some of the flaws that have kind of come to light as of recently. And through this, they were able to get a lot of good players that won them a lot of titles. But in the modern state of the league, people kind of understand a lot more that what's happening in TSM isn't as productive for the organization. And so I would guess that both this has affected kind of the results in the overall organization, and that players don't want to join as much. And so I'd say the root of this is probably with Regi, because we've seen a lot of things happening over time. No shade to him, by the way. But I'd say the solution is kind of a drastic change on his end, or just leaving.
All right, who wants to dive in first?
Travis, you're so passionate to me about this offline. You should take it.
Wait, when did we talk about this? I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just trying to remember when we talked about this.
You must have been hammered because you were going off. You should go
you're
off
trolling.
again.
Okay.
Ooh,
Because I was
so
like,
you
well,
need-
we went on a walk like a week or two ago, but I don't feel like we talked about this then.
Okay, go on.
No, I can start. Mark wants me to start. Okay. TSM.
Here we go.
I think TSM faces a multitude of issues at the moment, which will prevent them from having success in the LCS. And it's not just Andy. I think Regi is one of those issues because I don't think he can help himself from getting involved in the league side. Like I heard at one point in time that there almost needs to be like 2 GMs, like one GM that handles everything other than league, and then one GM that can just handle the relationship with Regi, because he focuses so much on the league side and can't help himself from getting involved. And I think to his detriment, right? Because in the past you had basically like Parth and Raz. Do you have something going by?
Yeah, I have the airplane just decides it needs to do a
it's fine.
flyby.
I'm trying to give a speech here.
My bad. Top Gun's happening right next to me.
Jesus.
You know what? Mute Travis. Leave Top Gun on.
Yeah. So, I think that that's one of the challenges. Is like it's not so easy to just say replace Regi, because here's the thing: is that Parth and Bjergsen, I think, in a lot of ways, were GMing/coaching that team for years, and them leaving is a huge issue as well. So even in a world where you got rid of like Regi, or he stepped down or something like that, I think you still have a huge gap in terms of what those two brought to the organization. And that's not to discredit necessarily the people that are over there right now, but I just don't think that they have like one. Bjergsen was able, just by sheer force of reputation, to bring a lot of players in at a much cheaper rate than other teams could, and also just to bring in great talent. And he's not there anymore, so there's no like incredible draw or magnetism that they used to face. And then I think the other thing that's happened is like they have publicly stated that they plan on spending less, right? Or like they feel uncomfortable with where it's at. Like their spending profile has changed dramatically from last year to this year. And in this league, it is very difficult to find success without spending a lot. And so I think that that's also something that has caused them to have issues. So while I do think that you are probably right that Reginald and his now public reputation has limited interest in acquiring talent both on the Rift and off, I think you also have these other issues that are compounding TSM's problems and will continue to. So that's kind of
so I guess to piggyback off that, what do you think a solution to that would be?
Regi steps down and gives TSM to Bjergsen. I don't know what the solution is. I think you have to probably I do think Regi stepping down is a part of it. I do think that hiring smart people and being willing to spend a lot of money is probably also part of it. You just have to do that, and it's up to TSM on whether or not it makes sense for them to do that. I think there's a lot of debate about if expenses in the league are the way that they should be. So yeah. I think those are at least step 1 and step 2. Raz, sorry, go ahead.
So kind of, I love the fact that you came up with that point as a segue. Hiring the right people, because you lost people in Parth and Lena. And also the players that were, as you mentioned, a big part of it. People want to join a team that has Bjergsen or Doublelift, or, basically if anything that gives you the reason to believe that they'll be a top team in the league, you will like a good reason to join them, or money. And now they've gone and cut all of that out or lost all of that. So my biggest issue with TSM is I don't know what their identity is. Every team in this league has started to force, like most teams in this league started to force an identity. If we're not spending money, then at least we're putting resources into our academy and amateur, right? We're looking to the next players so that we can find someone that we can hold on to and build the team around. And then
we're looking to coaches.
Or even if you buy or if you have like a notable GM or someone that you can say, okay, we're giving you the reins on this team so you can actually start focusing on building a pathway to the future. We're not seeing any of that. We know an assistant, quote unquote, an assistant general manager in Glenn. Who the fuck is the general manager? The face that we've seen the most is the VP of esports, if I remember correctly,
Dominic.
Dominic. Like, there is still no forward-facing, person. So like, I think the direction that they have gone towards, as you mentioned, has been like going for. At first, it was going for Chinese talent that was unexplored, and they realized, oh, we don't actually want to develop players. Well, what the hell were you actually doing? They were always going to be rough at the start. At least they're keeping Shenyi, okay, and now they're bringing in Maple, and this is the same thing we critique CLG for. The same thing we critique IMT for, is that you are kind of still trying to build to win now, and when it ultimately fails, and you have a huge ass chance of it failing because the players are just, at least the players that you're bringing in are just worse than their opponents, and you don't have any reason to believe that the team dynamic will be any better. He still is going to have a challenge in speaking the language. Then yeah, they lose. And what are you going to do? Next split, we're changing everything up again because we're never going to actually commit to a decision that we're making, a grand, idea. So TSM's going to be rough for a long time until they actually commit to something, until they have a central figure that is settling on, hey, we're not going to be paying a lot, so at least our academy team is going to be a good team and not last place permanently, right? And we have someone that we can have confidence in building in our academy and amateur system. Oh, are we going to pay a lot? Then fine, let's just start throwing money at the right people. They're doing nothing as of right now, is my issue.
Yeah, I think here's one thing I'll say. I'm not sure Regi's stepping down, well, good or bad, you can debate. I don't know if he'll actually have like a direct or immediate input, because I don't know how many players in the LCS were like, ooh, I didn't want to sign with TSM because of Regi. And if he is as hands-off as he claims to be with the LCS side of things, him stepping down won't help.
Yeah, I guess
I'm not trying to push that he shouldn't step down. I'm just saying that, like, if you're a TSM fan, like, or like anyone, I don't know why you would think that this would help TSM immediately, unless like he really does have his fingers in the pie still, and he's just telling everyone he doesn't.
I mean, I definitely think he does.
I mean, fair enough.
Yeah, I guess part of it might be that the kind of outside and sort of kind of viewer perception as a casual fan is that he's very heavily involved, which I guess might not end up being the case. But yeah, I guess it's something that we'll wait and see.
I mean, even if he's not in, like, one, I think he probably is more involved in the roster building than is depicted. I mean, I think we even had that last time, like whenever Dominic came on the show during Spring Split and couldn't give us an answer on who was making certain decisions, it was, in my opinion, that felt a lot like it was Regi that had been making the decisions, and Dominic was not in the position to be able to throw his boss under the bus. So there's that. I do think I disagree a little with Mark on the, like, I think that fans should be happy if Regi does step down. I don't think it's ever going to happen, but like, I do think they should be happy, because I do think that it is one of the things that should happen in order for this team to really start to be competitive again. And so even if it's like, oh, like, I don't think if Regi stepped down today that like suddenly TSM would become the super competitive team in summer, but I do worry about the future of that team competitively as long as he is so involved, even just in terms of like the budget decisions around it, right? He's like, he clearly doesn't believe in the league anymore. Like, if you go look at the Medium post that he made before around the import stuff, like, I don't think he has much faith in the LCS, and so it's going to impact his ability to like commit to it. So it's kind of where I'm at.
I think one thing to add, someone in the chat mentioned it, which I agree. I remember actually when the announcement came out that Smithy's going to be the head coach for their academy team. That's a positive. Like, there are positives. So maybe their academy team is not going to be last place, or like, at least when they brought in Takeover, he had some good aspects, and I don't like the fact that they immediately just said, okay, we're not using Takeover the next play. It was like, okay. But they're probably slowly getting better. But it's hard for me to understand what trajectory they're going. I remember hearing that Regi wasn't involved as much on the player side of things this time around. But how long that's going to last, especially since their investigations concluded. Who knows? So it's one of those things where I personally don't have faith. I just really don't. I think they're losing everything that made the organization what they were. They've lost the players. They lost the management. They're not really having a positive idea of picking up any high ranking players, or at least high costly players. And they're not picking up anyone to actually take over the management side that has a mind of its own. so
that's where I agree the most, and why I'm not sure like the immediate step down fix anything, because the brains of the operation for the last couple of years seem to have all left in Lena, Parth, and
Soren.
Yeah, Bjergsen. So yeah, Bjergsen. So like, you know, if those are the three pillars of the TSM dynasty for the last 6 years, like replacing them will take time, and like bringing in those things are ultimately like maybe Smithy can like help turn the ship around, at least from the academy level. Who knows from there? You know, like those are the kinds of things about like turnover, and like there's not really a fancy answer to the caller when he was like, how do you fix the problems that Travis explained? It's like, well, start making good decisions. You know, it's like not as easy as just like, oh, they just need to do this one thing. Anyone selling simple fixes usually BSing.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Okay, well, let's see, where were we? Softie, I think we've kind of gone through all of this as much as we can. I
largely agreed.
Yeah, I think mostly we agree. It's just sort of there's a lot of other things that you need to do, like but other than that, thank you for the call. Anything that you want to shout out before we go on to the next caller?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. I'd like to shout out my mom and dad. Love them a lot. Sponsors of the show and the podcast, and the MSI graphic design team, because I thought all the graphics were really cool.
Fantastic.
I agree.
Take notes. The greatest slogan of a tournament yet.
Was the glitchy stuff I thought was great. I like take notes. Okay, we're immediately, Travis, you hear a positive thing about the broadcast.
Because I'm pretty sure Mark was saying it sarcastically. Okay, I don't think he actually thought take notes was the best.
I was talking about the graphics.
Take over, uprise, uplift, ignite, unleash.
I thought it was all
make
really
or
cool.
break your notes, take your notes and then break them. Unleash your note-taking capabilities.
We're destroying something that somebody loves.
He said he liked the graphics. He didn't say he liked the phrase.
All I'm saying is if I ever have a child, and if they have like ice cream or a lollipop in their hand, I'm never sending them in your direction. You guys are just going to smack that shit out of their hand and be like, you're not realizing the negatives of what's happening in life and the cost of that particular candy.
I too am never having children for this reason.
Yeah, you've got the right idea.
The next year's MSI will be sponsored by Microsoft, because the phrase will be Open Excel. Anyway, thank you, Softie.
I can't wait for the Skype sponsorship.
Thank you, Softie, for the call, and
thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Catch you next time.
Take it easy.
Raz is gonna do a fucking 5-minute hype video about the take notes thing on his next positive spreading
Yeah,
campaign.
at least they rolled with it pretty well. That opening ceremony, no one talked about it. It's pretty good. I liked it. Enjoyed it.
I'm glad you did. Avura, thank you so much for the sub. Very much appreciate it. It's good to see so many folks subbing right now. We're waiting on Mark to get back.
He's enjoying himself over in that channel.
Taking a second to review my
phone
messages. Hello, Dr.Doktor. Where are you calling from?
The Dr.Doktor?
Yes, sir. I'm calling from Ontario.
Which Ontario?
Canada.
Okay.
There's only one Ontario,
No,
brother.
there's another Ontario CA, and it's much closer to you right now, Raz.
We do not recognize that Ontario.
What do you want to talk about on the show, Dr. Doctor?
The fact that MSI, like especially like the last two MSIs, there hasn't been much point of there being an MSI, because unlike World Championship, which holds a certain significance, a certain like appeal to it, like if you win the World Championship, you're like the best team, and World Championships are generally like seem more important than MSI. MSI just kind of dies down the moment it's done. And like Riot should probably do something to either make it more interesting, which this year definitely feel like it wasn't, and to like give it a better reward.
What would you like to see them change about it?
To be honest, there's a lot of things you could do. Like on things I've thought about, you could add more teams, which is probably like the worst idea, but like make it like whoever wins it has the incentive. For example, like they automatically qualify to Worlds. That's one of the things. I think Cadril said that on his stream. He was like one of the first people to propose the idea that like the person who wins MSI should be able to get a free spot to Worlds, because they have the most grueling schedule out of anyone who went.
I'm gonna have to have a talk with Cadril. That's an
Yeah, I
insane
know. He's been
idea.
talking about that on Twitter and stuff. I feel like it's
awful idea.
like it's very one. It's a little goofy, but also like it's also a little redundant because I'm pretty sure. Mark, weren't you the one that was just talking? Like, when was the last time somebody won MSI but then didn't make Worlds that year?
I don't think anyone's ever won MSI and then lost. I think just qualifying for MSI almost always means that the team makes it to Worlds. I don't think any team's ever won MSI and then didn't make it to Worlds. I could be wrong, but I don't think that's ever happened.
Yeah,
Anyway.
So that's one of the few hard shots you could say. The other thing you could propose is, you know how sometimes like if they decide like which countries or like which regions are gonna have like 3 seeds or 4 seeds, you use MSI to determine that for Worlds.
I mean, they already kind of use it to determine. Wait, do they use last year's Worlds or do they do MSI? Because at one point in time they were using MSI to determine something, right?
To be honest, I'm not sure. There was a period of time where it was like the last 4 international tournaments. They like averaged the placings of the teams to decide who were like the top 4 and whatnot. You know, like, or maybe it's top. I forget, but like they've changed it over in time to the point where like I don't even know. They have never publicly said, as far as I'm aware, why LJL was the 4 seed this time around. You know, like everyone was confused about that. Still confused about that. I don't think they've commented on how they drew up the pools for MSI.
All right. Anyway, so you just wanted to have some impact, mostly on Worlds. It seems like, Dr. Doctor.
Either they make MSI into some kind of like, because a lot of like other games have majors, right? But for some reason, unlike those majors, MSI isn't taken that much into like consideration overall. Like maybe it shows off like international competition, but we got like, because of like play-ins, like we got maybe not enough to be exciting. So like, what should be done like overall to make sure that like this competition feels important?
Can I start out with the first thing when I said it was like an awful idea? Just to like iron out why an event that happens in the middle of the season should never pre-qualify a team for the for the final event. There was once upon a time a team called Najim Black Sword that got 400 points, like circuit points within the region, and then instantly dipped into the NLB, which is like their secondary league. And then like they got rewarded heavily for like succeeding and doing really well at the beginning of the season, and then got instantly seeded basically into Worlds, even though they were ass in terms of recency, and then instantly got kicked. So it's like they looked much better, apparent, of course, like when they actually came to the finals, if I remember correctly. But like it was one of those, like the community went wild at the time of like, wow, we should never do this again. Like we should never have circuit points or like pre-seeding for something that happened earlier. So like it's just something that we should never delve into, and if we do, we should be aware of the history of pre-seeding based off of that.
It's for that angle, Raz, there's literally no upside to doing so, because the only time that a team will benefit from this is a time where we don't want them there.
Yep.
So there's no reason to pre-seed a team to Worlds who wins MSI, because if they get 4th or 5th for some of these regions who already have 4 seeds, who are probably the ones winning MSI, you're like, fuck, I don't want you if you're that bad. Like, yeah, it sucks that MSI tanked your Worlds chances, but also no. And like any time that teams get pre-seeded, it happened with 100 Thieves as well, where they lost 2 best of 5s and then made Worlds. Everyone was like, it's time to kill this system. And like literally the next year the system was changed, because you shouldn't be able to lose 2 best of 5s
Yep.
and then go to Worlds when you're clearly weaker than the other teams still playing. So
Because the reality, the reality is either there's going to be a patch change significant for the next split that harms them, or more realistically, whatever happened in that event broke them team internally. And so they just like, you usually come out hearing about like, oh, this team just didn't function anymore. Like top laner, like the relationships on this team was pretty shaken because of like this really bad experience at a boot camp or internationally. Like, no, just how about the team that performs going into the event qualifies for the event, period.
Here's the easy way to fix MSI.
Well, so before you give the reason to fix MSI, can I push back on the entire take and just say I disagree from the premise that there's a big problem with MSI beyond the potential format? Like, do you think RNG is not happy? Do you think like the people who were competing weren't enjoying it? Like, I had a great time with that. Like, it was a good finals, more or less. You know?
Yes,
like,
I do think that there's a lot of people who don't want it. Aren't allegedly, and I don't know where this came from, right? Because it's been repeated ad nauseum, but RNG didn't want to be a part of it. Like, you do have a thing where teams more and more are like, do we even want to go to MSI? This
yeah,
it's not. They couldn't go to MSI. There's a reason for that, Travis.
No, but this is not. This is not isolated to this event. There's been a lot of teams in the past who have sort of whispered behind the scenes about like, is MSI even worth it? Because you go and then you suck when you get back, and you don't get any time to recover.
As an example is my point. Like using RNG as an example, a team that was like hard, like the worst position possible. The only way they can actually participate in the tournament is from Shanghai. So yeah, perhaps they didn't want to go. But if they actually had
throw
the
it out the
freedom to go
window
to
and
Korea,
use the other teams that like, or the other discussions sometimes about if MSI is worth it. Like, Mark, that's part of it is that like we're not even sure if teams feel like it's worth it to go to MSI because Riot has leveraged Worlds and put Worlds so much on a pedestal that like this is why like everyone always has this weird MSI identity crisis where it's like, what the fuck is this tournament? Because we're spending half the tournament watching a bunch of games that don't matter, and I know you're going to talk about that in format, but it's also just a matter of like the results don't feel like they necessarily matter. Like at this event, I felt like it really came down to just that finals match. It didn't necessarily feel like semifinals was even competitive. Like I'm not saying get rid of MSI, but I do think that like MSI has bigger issues than just like the format's not great.
Yeah, and to that point, the problem that I have whenever people talk about the identity crisis of MSI is like, well, just make it matter for Worlds. It's like, stop building Worlds as the only tournament that matters. MSI still matters a lot. Like when you talk about these teams in the history, like they've won 3 MSIs, they've done this, they've done that. Like people don't just ignore that MSI happens. I think there's this big belief that for some reason that no one talks about this shit, but people talk about it all the time. Like for the people that win MSI, they get a ton of credit. They don't just fucking disappear. And so I think that people who say that are probably like getting ahead of themselves, the same way that like a bunch of NA teams were like, oh yeah, I don't even really care about winning domestically anymore. And then they go shit their pants when they try and like focus on winning internationally, and then they start sucking domestically. That's how I feel about teams who start like getting ahead. Like, oh, MSI didn't even really matter. It's like, okay, T1. Fucking blue side, okay? You know, like
we don't need to go down that road.
Can I just say,
we're going down there later. Sorry.
Can I just say, just to like react to the initial question of like, this is a very like Western, mostly North American perspective, where the last MSI like didn't have a North American team at the semifinals was PSG and Mad Lions, and this one we finally did, but like it was a 3-0. Like for sure, North American teams and fans would be like, damn, this fucking blows. But then when I saw the Reddit thread, record-setting 2.1 million peak viewership for the finals of MSI, yeah, I'm pretty sure Korea and China cares.
Yeah, okay, I'm not saying people don't care, but you're also starving them. Like, you're not giving them anything else other than Worlds and MSI. So, like, that's one of my frustrations is, like, you can point, as long as the esport is growing, viewership on the only other international event besides Worlds will probably also grow too, because you are just starving people of content otherwise, and that's why like they latch onto this stuff so much. But that doesn't mean that like you can't dramatically change this event.
So I do agree with you. I don't think that's like the question, to be fair. But I do agree with you. Like the fact that we lost Rift Rivals, I know North America and Europe are like Rift Rivals is useless, but China and Korea was like, this is actually one of our better events. This is a really fun event that carried a lot of narrative when T1 went up against RNG, or when KT was in the finals in a huge best of 5 finals in the last Rift Rivals that ended up happening. Like there's
I liked
a
Rift
lot that
Rivals, by
happened.
the way. I just think it wasn't scheduled. Like it was a schedule issue.
My main point is more international events everyone will enjoy. Now the solution isn't MSI doesn't matter. Like I would rather not have an MSI than have an MSI like this. No, MSI was great in the back half of it in what's it called, Rumble stage, and then the finals. It should clearly change its format. I don't think anybody coming into this event said, "Wow, I'm glad this format's back." I was actually shocked when I saw that it was the same format that everyone complained about in the last MSI. Does that mean we should just not have a MSI altogether? Because we, as the West, hated it because it was a god awful period of time for us, and also our teams were ass. No, like change the event. The reality will still suck for us, but everyone else will enjoy it still.
So this is to Travis, if you want to go off about the format. That's my take on it too. Is like the problems that MSI has are largely like with the format, because I think for these teams, like Raz says, that are going back and forth in those best of 5s, like I feel like RNG is pretty happy to have beaten them. Like the coaches' comments on Reddit about like first they say they're going to 3-0 us, then after the coin toss is going to be a 3-1, then after we beat them it's 3-2. Or it was Ming, yeah. Like I don't know, it feels like people are enjoying it. Or like salty, and like there's emotional investment. I think the format can be a lot better, because to the point about Rift Rivals dying, there's also a thing on Reddit about how there's only been 3 best of 5s between EU and NA at these international events since like 2012. It's been like 3 total best of 5. So thank God we were in the same fucking group. But like, I think we're starved for more good international competition. But like, one of the reasons this format sucks is because you get one LPL LCK final. They're the only 2 teams close to each other. EU and NA just serve as like fucking bodies to climb over to like pad out the tournament.
When do I get to say my shtick that you interrupted me?
Go ahead. Now it's all you, buddy.
Okay,
here we go.
Fucking God.
I'm gonna leave so you can talk.
No.
Oh,
I'm just putting all these.
Stay here, because this is the meaty part of the conversation I want to have. I think the biggest issues with MSI right now are, one, the scheduling is really rough on a lot of teams. I think that's actually a big part of the reason why a lot of teams debate whether or not they want to go, or like why there's this conversation, because I think like you have very little downtime to get over there, then you have very little downtime to get back to the start of the league. So they need to, like, at Riot, they now have a situation where all of esports reports up into John Needham. So they should be able to now brute force all these leagues and regions into actually having a schedule that makes a lot of sense. I don't think that there should be a world where like LCS is finishing like 10 days before the start of MSI or whatever weirdness it was. It was really short. So 1, fix the scheduling. 2, go to my YouTube channel and watch Mark's Blame Game on the format stuff. Nobody watched that episode because no one's watching any Blame Game episodes anymore. But watch that episode, because he talks about a really cool format called Swiss that would work. However, Mark failed, and maybe this is why people aren't watching it, because he said, oh, you should do this weird lopsided 12-team situation, when it's very obvious to me that you should just move to 16 teams, because then it's really easy to make that format work. And we're at the point now where like you get 4 teams from a lot of regions at Worlds, so it's safe to say send 2 from each of the 4 major regions. It's like, if you want to say NA doesn't get one unless they do well at Worlds or whatever, sure, like send it to fucking some other region or something if you want. I don't care, but like actually have more than just one team there, so that it's like you actually do end up with like really interesting things on like who's going to bust her out. Like you have more chances. Like part of the reason Worlds works pretty well is because you can sometimes have these underdogs like outperform the teams that are more expected, because you just have more teams there, more chances, et cetera, et cetera. So fix the schedule, invite 2 more teams from each of the major regions, and like then this will start to feel more competitive, better, and like you'll build better storylines over time.
Here's why you're wrong about everything you just said. No, I think no. I think everyone agrees. Like, if there's a way to build more room for MSI, and this is to the callers ultimately to drag it back to his point about not feeling like MSI matters, it's because so much of the tournament is like dead air right now, where like what you think is going to happen is what happens. Like, did anyone think we weren't going to get an LPL LCK final aside for like that like 2-day stretch where G2 was looking good before the wheels came off? You know, like it's just so long to reach inevitable conclusions. And so there's a lot of ways to fix MSI, but just treating it like its own prestigious tournament would be the best thing you can do. Give it more space in the middle of the season. A mini Worlds is kind of like always what it's kind of been booked as, but it doesn't really feel like that. So if John Needham or whoever at Riot can give the tournament some more space to invite a couple more teams to make it feel like its own more prestigious event, I think it would go a long way to Travis.
I'm gonna say it.
Say it.
The theme of it being a mid-season invitational where they get the champions of all regions sucks. It blows.
It should be good. It should be good, but there's just not enough parity between the leagues to make it good.
It works in Valorant because for whatever reason, I know the reason. Like we can go into the depths of it. Regional competition is there. You can have a Latin American team actually go pretty far, and they did. You can have other teams do well, but like having the champion of Japan come in or the champion in Oceania come in, you're like, the Oceanic champion would struggle versus an academy team, like the top academy team in North America. Like, and it's not coping. That's literally what happens. Like, I was a part of a system way back in like 2014 or 15, I forget, where like the best Oceanic team, the Chiefs Esports, went to North America to just like boot camp for IWCQ, and like the challenge was amateur and academy. Like that is just how it is.
And so you don't even have to just make it shading the minor regions. Like realistically, most of the years, the North American and European champions would struggle to get top 3 in the Eastern regions. Like there's been times, yes, where G2 is legitimately competing with these teams, but the majority of the time, no fucking way. Like a lot of the tournaments, the EU and NA teams wouldn't even, stand a chance in playoffs for these other regions. And so like to that point about parity, it's not just the minor regions having no chance against the major. It's within the major regions. Even some of the pool 1 seeds are not close to each other.
Just Danny in the chat just said that was 10 years about Oceania. Like, we can't have both opinions or both cakes where it's like, the Oceanic players coming in an academy is like over bloated, and there's a community going wild and saying, well, this North America amateur talent is as good as this Oceanic player, but then at the same time say that an Oceanic team would do well versus a North American team. Like, no. And I'm not gonna, that's a completely different subject. I'm not going to go into it.
I want to wrap up.
I'm not going to do it. My main point before you wrap up is just simply, I don't like the idea of champions in every region coming together. I think you need to have like the second seed team in the, I'll say second seed for now, from Korea, China, like Europe, things like that, to add more teams into the mix and just more competition. That's what I would want.
All I want to say at the end of this is, I hope if somebody from Riot is watching this and listening to our opinions on MSI, that they take notes. All right, Dr. Anything you want to shout out before we go on to our next caller?
Thank you guys for having me here. It was fun. I really liked what you guys said because I was thinking about the same thing. I actually don't know what to shout out, so I hope you guys have a nice day.
Doctor, I'm gonna shout you out.
Thank you, good sir. In fact, I've been wanting to do League Esport content because I find it really interesting, but it's really hard to find a way to get into it.
I would just say make videos. Do the dumb shit I'm doing where I
Don't
just like
do it.
push out YouTube videos.
It's
and
a
then put
disaster.
No, it's not, because it
All of
creates
us hate
conversation. It's so he's not actually being
We're
serious.
tortured
here, but
souls.
Become a Twitter analyst and quote retweet bigger content creators stuff and just argue with them.
Yeah.
That's
you
how you
get on
do
them.
it.
That's how you do it. That's the best way to get
Oh
a
my
following.
god! Or if you actually want to make content, I promise you, the way I got in was literally I had a blog. I was writing about either the Chinese league, at times North America, but mostly Chinese. That's like that. That was my brand at the time. And then I added the bigger content creators. Like for me, it was Kelsey, Frost, stuff like that. So if you want to make content, just like go in, just do it, make the content, and add the people involved, and they will interact with it if they like it.
Just wait until you finance one of your closest friends' shows. He puts a ton of work into it, and then he gets 7K views. Anyway, thank
It's
you
up
so
to
much,
8K
Dr.
now,
Doctor.
buddy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Doctor, for
Mine's
the call.
showing 851 viewers. I think it's bugged, but okay.
Yeah, you're already on the. Okay, anyway. No, I wasn't talking about Hotline League. I was talking about.
It's not about blame game.
Anyway,
Why you shouldn't have Hotline Link too, Dr. Doctor? I don't know about that one.
Dr. Doctor, get out of here. All right.
Have a nice.
You just fucking booted him out.
I didn't. Here's the thing. I right click, and then always when I'm pressing the button, somebody starts to speak, and then it just sounds like I've like murdered them. Okay.
Do we have an ad read, or should I get the next
No.
person?
You could grab one more caller, and then we'll do an ad read after. Off mark goes. Thank you to Benjamin and Eugene for the subs. Thanks, everyone.
That was too fast, Mark. That was too quick.
Camden is here. Camden, where are you calling from?
Ventura County, California.
Ventura, California. We have a lot of California callers today. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So my take is something a lot of people probably thought coming out of finals, and that is that T1 coaching staff massively underperformed this MSI.
Oh.
I believe you mean the coin massively underperformed this MSI?
Yeah, so, well, I want to talk about the Game 5 draft at some point. But T1 was able to create massive advantages the vast majority of early games, and the coaching staff both weren't able to find a way to transition leads or draft in a way that makes winning the mid and late game simple. And yeah.
Boom.
All right.
You go out of this one, Mark.
Well,
I
I want to also just ask, more broadly speaking, Mark and Raz, like there was a ton of flame that was going around for drafts all over the place. I feel like it can, like lately, and Mark, you kind of talked about this during LCS at one point in time, that like it feels like the new meta, like Twitter analyst meta, is to say, oh my god, this game is over, that team just lost draft, it's over, I can't believe they drafted this champion. And then it doesn't matter if you win or lose, because what happens is if you end up being wrong and the team that you flame their draft wins, you just say, oh my god, so good that other team threw at Baron, because otherwise there was no way they were ever going to win this game with that draft. It just took that team literally into
Travis, you now realize that you could be an analyst.
Boom, just like that.
You cracked it. You don't actually need to improve your game knowledge at all. I think it's especially funny in Game 5 when like their bot lane fucking ints and they're like, God, how are they going to win with Jhin? And I'm like, how are you going to win when you fucking kill yourself level 1? You know? It's like, who cares about the draft, dude? They played like dog water. I mean, it is a bad draft, but you know, come on.
Here's what I'm gonna do. No one has said this yet. It's been nagging at me for a bit. I'm gonna say it. It's not that. I mean, everyone kind of knows whenever it comes to drafting conversation, it's generally not the coach itself, it's the players. And
does everybody know that, Raz? I don't think that's what everybody knows.
It's constantly discussed, but like, so
it's constantly discussed, never heard.
Well, what I'm gonna say is the main point. So like, the main point for me is that everyone's been speaking has been praising Zeus, you know, but the reality was when they were on the second game, like. And I'm pretty sure at that point they believed that RNG was gonna first pick Wukong. Like they banned Jax on 3. Like fully aware that Bin, if he gets Gwen, they weren't gonna go for Gwen, but if they could get Gwen, that they were afraid of the Jax pick. So it felt like they were aiming to go 2-3, 1-2 on Gwen and then ban out the Jax, but they didn't have the Jax in their favor. In fact, every single time the Gwen was picked on the opposite side, it was the Jace that was something that they would go for. And in fact, throughout the entire regular season, the amount of Jace that this man has played was disgusting. It was a first pick Jace throughout the season. Felt like they didn't actually ever want to experiment on anything past that. Zeus just didn't have a champion pool like that was even comparable to Bin. Like Bin can play a lot of things. The question on Bin is how much he into the beginning of the split or at times the regular season. Like maybe it's a motivation thing, who knows. But Zeus, like if you're really hamstrung on red side, if your top laner can play like really a matchup that is not optimal, like you can't really do anything. So then you could say, okay, why don't we ban the Gwen? That's a good question. I actually am really surprised that they banned Galio the entire time. We all know how good Galio is in RNG's hands. Most of the time it's a first pick, and you know clearly that it's going to go mid lane. Sure, you can go support, but RNG will go mid lane Galio. And I thought personally that T1 handled that very well. The last time we saw Faker go Tristana, or just play for mid, and anytime Galio went sides, they like hard punished it. So yeah, to an extent, I think their strategy going into pick ban was poor, but I also believe that they just were pretty tied. That Zeus didn't have really any other champions past Jace that he was confident with into the matchup. And if you're going into Gwen and you have a lot of bans that you need to go for, yeah, that sucks for that team. It sucks a lot if you feel like you're hamstrung every single time you're on red side. I think most teams, a lot of teams will generally prefer red side if they have a larger champion pool for them from their players. So yeah, did they think they needed blue side? That's yes, to their specifically for that team. So I'm sure Polt didn't want to criticize his player, and he should. You should absolutely like at some point own it a little bit. Not come out and flame the player, but say, yeah, we were limited on this side, or we were just worse players, we were a worse team. Something that gives credit to the opposing team, because what he did was like horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, so it's just so funny too, because like by most metrics, they wouldn't have gotten blue side anyways, because they were the lower seed coming into the thing. The coin flip is actually, I don't know if it's new this year, or if it was last year too, but like traditionally the higher seeded team gets side select. So like they wouldn't have gotten blue side. Like I'm actually glad RNG got blue side, because they should have had it, because they were the higher seed from the group stage. And to that point, like I agree, the drafts were not good. I didn't like their game 1 draft. Actually, that was one of the few things I tweeted last night or 2 nights ago, whenever it was. I didn't like their game 1 draft. And then you talk about game 3, game 5, leaving up, they banned Nautilus over the Gwen.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you doing? And to your point about the player stuff, I guarantee you, Polt's pulling Zeus aside, being like, hey, dude, they're going to first pick Gwen again if we leave it up. Is this a problem? And he's like, nah, dude, I'll crush it this time. Don't worry. Give me the rock, coach. Give him Gwen. I don't give a shit. Bin sucks. You know, like players start thinking this way. They say this shit all the time. They get egos and they're like, no, he's not good. He's not good on Gwen. I'm better. He just got lucky. Like they're just ganking me. Like just give me more wards. It's fine. Like I guarantee you some level of this conversation happened between Polt and Zeus, and like people are going to flame Polt's drafting, but like 100% to your point about champion pools, but also just like the ego that players develop to be like, no. He's not that good. Let him have it again.
Yeah, and just stubbornness generally. I know hearing the Impact interview with Ashley Kang on Horizon, like talking about when he shook hands with Zeus at the very beginning, like early on, like that, you know, he's like, okay, you could tell he was nervous, like he was shaking, like those type of things. Like I don't want to psychoanalyze, but like there's a million reasons why a player would, if he believes firmly this is how a matchup should go or something, or there's an expectation or all these things, that he'll just like stick to it and be stubborn in there rather than changing things during a series, right? So that one harmed him a lot. You're right about game 1 draft, like the Nocturne, when you definitely don't want to dive.
Full poke comp with Nocturne in it. It's just like, what the fuck did you make? It was the trollest draft I've ever seen. It's like they didn't even win the early game. They picked like multiple early game pushing champs. Don't get an advantage in the early game. It's just the fucking stupid. It's the worst draft of the. I think it's worse than game 5's draft, to be honest. People people only ever talk about game 5 drafts at the end of a series, but their game 1 draft is actually the worst of the series.
It was.
Can I comment on the Nautilus pick or the Nautilus ban? Excuse me, in Game 5. So, I think Raz said earlier that the players also have a say in like what they're picking. It's not only the coaches, but I think that the Nautilus ban was a coach idea. I think they knew they wanted to pick Yuumi on 4-5, and so they didn't want like RNG to blind Nautilus, and so like that was that. So they banned Nautilus because they wanted to pick Yuumi. And then when Keria hovered Zillion, they like, I think it was Keria's idea, but the coaches were like, hey, we prepared the Yuumi, and then they went ahead and picked that. But I think you shouldn't draft in this way, like thinking so far down the line.
I wouldn't want to go too far in that direction. Just because it was a first phase ban, you're never planning that far ahead. Yeah, like 4-5. So much can actually happen within your draft. And I don't think, like, I firmly don't believe that was the case, because they're a great team. I know as much as like the community and ourselves are like raving on them. Unless if you are going to be picking your enchanter that early on first 3, you're not going to be going 5 pick Yuumi, being like, yeah, we were planning this from the beginning. So I that's why I wouldn't believe it. But I do think just in general, they were a limited team. And they were really successful domestically because of how talented their individuals were. But the moment they faced a team that was equally as good, maybe a tiny bit worse you could make the case on certain players, though Gumayushi just like Amber Hearded it.
What the Oh my god, dude. Oh my god.
But yeah, like I think outside of that, I would absolutely say that Worlds will be better for T1. It'll be better for T1. I think you need to face like good competition to realize that your mid game, your drafts need to get work done.
To that point too, like they were insanely dominant. I don't even think that this is 100% troll where I said G2 mind controlled T1 into thinking they had good drafts. I think they're so used to winning early games so hard that like it's kind of whatever, because so many of their drafts are about prio and pushing, and like, you know, you can't sacrifice your team. Like, at least in this meta, maybe it'll change in the future, but like in this meta, I thought I'd been demonstrated that team fighting was super important. And so many of their drafts are like, it doesn't matter. We got the shove for the wave. And it's like, I don't think like Kate Morg, Jace, Azir is actually ever going to like be able to team fight. Like, this just isn't like how the meta plays, but they're so dominant regionally. And then even at different points in this tournament that they could kind of just draft whatever and roll over their competition, that like RNG was not a team that they could get laning advantages against as easily. And they didn't have, to Raz's point, like these other play styles or pools to fall back on.
Well, Camden, thank you so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out?
Yeah, discord.gg/lab, and I have an Alienware monitor and computer. I didn't use your promo code for either of them, but I do, and I enjoy them, so thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you for grabbing Alienware products. We'll catch you next time.
There we go.
All right.
He was an independent man. You didn't need your code, Travis.
We're going to take a quick break to talk about Grubhub. So this week on in Grubhub news, I am promoting, because I think there are some folks of you that have still not used it yet before. You've never tried Grubhub. Right now, you can use code NEWTRAVIS, NEWTRAVIS, and get $10 off your first delivery with Grubhub. It's always on, so you don't need to do it this week, but you should do it this week, and that works for the first 500 people each week. So please go check that out. If you haven't ever used Grubhub before, use NEWTRAVIS. I'll put it in the chat, and I'll also put it into the description. Lane Plock says, "What should I order? I was waiting for the code." Well, again, you need to make sure that you haven't used Grubhub before, but I don't know what's available in your area. I'm sorry, so I can't give you advice, but find something delicious.
Some kind of fried chicken. Fried chicken is never the wrong answer.
Grubhub has been so helpful for me the last couple of weeks because I've been on this weird sleep schedule, like everybody covering MSI, and boy golly gee, have I ordered a lot of Grubhub. Maybe too much Grubhub. No, you know what? There's no such thing. Anyway, thank you so much to Grubhub for sponsoring the show. We appreciate you guys, and I hope all of you appreciate that as well. Does the code for Alienware work for the ultra-wide monitor? Not at the moment. It doesn't always work on brand new stuff, to answer the Twitch chat question. But we're working on getting a link where even if it can't, unfortunately, it won't necessarily give you a discount, but it will be a situation where we're able to get some of that. It directly supports us, maybe is the best way to put it. Mark, are we ready for the next caller?
Yeah, I didn't know if you were. Let's do it.
Arsh is here. Arsh, where are you calling from?
I'm in SF right now, but normally I'm in Santa Monica. That's where I go to college.
Nice. Okay, man, everybody from the Southern California area. Okay, what do you want to talk about on the show?
I said I'm a G2 and Caps fan all the way, but the way they collapsed during during MSI was apparently burnout, which concerns me severely for summer because I've never seen in my life Caps burned out, never heard of it. And if it's happening now, it's really scary for the Caps, Claps, Craps sort of narrative, I think.
Can you expand a little bit on where you're hearing the burnout stuff coming from?
Flockhead talked about like it was a really long schedule. Also, like if you just look at how they're playing, it really seemed like there was there was a lower level of play, right? Like after day 2, Caps gapped Xiaohu in their one game against them, and then after that looked worse and worse. I didn't think his performance during the best of 5 was anything notable, which is really sad because I really like Caps. And I just thought that like over time, like it looked kind of like how EG did, where it was like their flashes of brilliance looked fewer and further between, even though I think Mark mentioned earlier, like I don't think the 3-0s were necessarily indicative of like NA EU being so much worse. I think there were worlds where like they both take games, but I think that G2 did not look as good as they could have, and like over the course of the tournament they looked worse and worse, and that's concerning.
Totally tangential to this. Has actually totally relevance to this. Just wanted to toot my own horn for the EG versus G2 compared to the T1 versus RNG versus EG instead of the T1 versus G2 matchups, where I said it was more likely that EG won the series, more likely that G2 took a game versus T1 because T1 was just too dominant, and then G2 just gets absolutely booty blasted and EG was more competitive. I was like, it was both 3-0s. To Travis's point about like we're debating like 1% chance of things happening, but totally irrelevant to everything you just said. Sorry, I just had to slip that in.
No,
there
I think it makes
again.
sense, right? Like G2 stylistic matchup into T1, like how they played this year, was also pretty bad, right?
My name is Mark, and I hear your question. I'm gonna ignore it and pat myself on the back.
I forgot 3 or 4 times I meant to say, and I keep forgetting. So here you go. All right, Raz, you go salvage this call for me.
I don't think it has anything to do with the schedule. I do think the schedule is rough on everybody. That's just how it is once you go through a long split where it is just playing scrims and getting into a new region and all this stuff. It's probably better from the side of T1 and RNG that are just like chillaxing during scrims, while North America in particular, but I'm sure you are like getting thrashed against specific like Eastern teams. So I know that that's just going to have a lot more external stress involved, but I wouldn't have really allotted to that. Watching the actual finals itself, I mean, T1 was just already, I felt like, on a good trajectory in the Rumble stage. Like they beat RNG in the final game, and it felt like their drafts were getting better. I know, the finals incident is something we kind of just talked about, but in their semifinals, I actually just enjoyed their draft, specifically the LeBlanc draft, where they could play sides and they actually literally just could play team fights better. I enjoyed that was their game 2 draft. I thought that they had played the game 1 draft really well. In fact, I was just talking about how Faker Tristana playing into Galio first pick, guaranteed mid, was a great decision. I wish they actually followed through on that one from the team that originated that in RNG, right? So there were some ideas that T1 had in this series that I really, really wish they carried on to the second series. So T1 just were just better.
That's a good point. I mean, show best Galio in the world and you don't pull out your insane counter. I didn't think of that.
Crazy. I don't know. Maybe it's like they were afraid from scrims. I can only imagine, just because like in semifinals you're playing the team in the other, you're scrimming the other team in the other group. I mean, I think I remember hearing that RNG was maybe scrimming EDG just because they were they're in China, but no, I would guarantee that they would be scrimming somewhat. Anyways, back to the point is, yes, they should have carried some of their drafting philosophies into the finals. They just played better individually and had better drafts. And also just kind of go into G2 a little bit. Even in some of the wins that they had versus the top tier teams in Rumble stage, they were like the one versus T1 at the very beginning. T1 had a horrific draft, and then at the same time, their bot lane was losing early on to Guma. I kind of felt like that was going to be a constant, where G2 just had an inexperienced bot lane coming into an event with like top tier bottom lanes. So it finally came through. I think they'll be better in Worlds, but I don't think it's burnout.
I hope it's not burnout. I was worried that you're about to drop some like interview or something that I hadn't seen on Reddit or something. So I'm sure they are somewhat burnt out. I think everyone by the end of MSI is like, God, just get me home and let me fucking sleep. I think,
like Danny's tweet. I think it was more like that from Flocked that I saw. I don't think it was explicit.
Okay, yeah. I mean, in that case, like, it sucks for them that, you go to Raz's point, you kind of get your ass blasted, you come home, everyone else is scrimming ahead of you, there's probably pressure, all these things are going to make you feel bad. But if it's not like the player saying, oh God, I'm burnt out, then it's more like this sounds weird, like a natural tiredness that comes with the job for a lot of people, versus like the one that always stood out to me, I think it was 2016 Fnatic, when they were just like turbo grind lords, and like by the end of Worlds, all the players were like, I would rather be dead than scrimming right now, but we're deep in Worlds or whatever it was,
2018 Worlds was a Korea, right? 2018 Worlds.
I think it's 2018.
Perks was just like, I can't fucking do it. Like, he mega burned out and talked about that in the interview after they were done.
Yeah.
Or maybe
the
while they
team-
were going, I think is when they were doing
There's multiple teams as well
Yeah.
that have had this. Yeah.
Yeah. So the team like that would probably, and this is just me speculating, that would have the least issue of burnout is like a T1 that didn't have much of a playoffs because their playoffs format is ass. Like they're also doing a cakewalk during their split, and their actual event is in their region, like so is in Korea. So well, it's Busan, but still, like you're at least not that far away from home, and the time change not that crazy. China I would say RNG would probably have the biggest case because they have a gulag of a playoffs format, and like the regular season is this constant game,
And they're trapped.
between 20 teams, and they're trapped in their own house for months. Like you can imagine that for them, it's like I just don't even want to be a part of the event. You know, as Travis said earlier, like it's very possible, maybe even likely, where players are like, yeah, you know what, I'd rather not join or something like that. But every team is gonna at some forms have some burnout and would want to have a break at some point. But I wouldn't allot it to their reasons for failure.
Yeah, I do think that given the schedule and all that stuff, it's I can definitely understand Danny. It's a little weird.
Or RNG having to play the 3 extra games. I forgot about that.
The solo queue games, I think was
True.
literally solo queue for them.
I do feel like EU has had, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like EU's had the easiest schedule this year because they had giant weeks off while Riot went on vacation and all that stuff, and so
they're 3 weeks off in the
EU
middle.
was big chilling. I think
Yeah.
I was annoyed as an LEC fan. I was like, where is content?
Yes. Yeah, well, let it be known, for all of their issues, LCS actually just bullied through it while LEC was like vacation time.
I will
Anyway,
say G2 still went through lower bracket, and they have a more egregious lower bracket than we do. They just, if you are not top 4 teams, you are playing nearly every other day. So I think G2 still had a lot in terms of play. They didn't have long series, a lot of 3-0s, but still.
Arsh, thank you so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out before we go on to our last caller?
Dignitas, the league. I hope they do well with Gamsu because I've been writing for their site and stuff. I've been doing a lot of blog writing on my own, and I'm writing for Dignitas now. So I hope they do well because that'd be cool. Also,
I have a question for you.
Oh yeah.
How are you being paid?
I would be willing to talk to you about that off stream, kind of. But it's actually I've talked to some friends about that. So
Listen, he gets the finest mouse pads that
There it
anyone
is.
can get.
See, the mouse pads are all it's what it's about.
Arsh, thank you so much. Oh, did you have anything else you wanted to shout out?
I just wanted to say any female league casters that are like amateur or up, I'm writing a piece about sort of like this railroading stuff around female league casters that I've been seeing for a while, and I'm really interested in like that kind of thing. So if you are watching this and you're a female league caster, please reach out to me on Discord or Twitter. I would love to talk to you about it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Arsh, for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
Cool. Thank you.
I saw somebody in... What, Mark?
No, you go first. I'm going to say something unrelated.
Yeah, I'm going to say something unrelated.
Well, then I'm
Gabriel
more
in the
unrelated.
chat, in the Pleb Topics chat, had a take which was, Travis is so negative, which influences the majority of the fans to hate LCS. And I was like, hey, I
Bring
will
him
at
on.
least the negative creators out there, people... Actually, you know what? Bring this person on if they're
No,
still, if
they're
Gabriel's
not
still
even-
there.
Dude, they're not even in one of the voice calls. It's going to be a whole
not
thing.
doing it.
It's 850. Listen, no one watches our fucking show. There's 800 people here. What reach do you think we have? You would have to 100x our viewership, and we still would be less than the LCS. How many people do you think are watching our shit?
I just want
What
to say
about
to
the
any
YouTube
potential
viewers, huh?
sponsors or current sponsors out there, tons of people watch our content. We have amazing
We
reach.
have amazing reach. I can
The
convince
YouTube
anyone
army.
to do anything. I literally brainwash people to buy your products.
But I in the future I am down. Mark, in the future I'm down. We could have a side chat about it. But like sometimes I see these people on my YouTube comments and I'm like, come on the show.
Well, so finally, our last caller is a more combative one, but more for the broadcast.
Okay. Whatever. Either way, I just thought it was very funny because in a follow-up message they said he only likes TSM.
Wait,
That's you.
It's me. I'm the mega TSM fan who only likes TSM. Anyway,
Yep.
you want to grab the next caller?
No, my two things. One, I feel like staying home for a tournament, if it's close to where you actually live, is unrated about how OP that is compared to people that have to travel, deal with cuisine that they don't normally eat, or they have to eat like bastardized versions of the food that they actually like, or you have sleep problems where you have to deal with jet lag and all these things and not living at home. I've heard so many horror stories, like teams when they go like Aiainz Katowice and stuff, and you're like, wow, this was terrible. Unironically, T1 had a home field buff for sure, but no one ever talks about home field buffs.
Didn't RNG also have a home field buff?
No, it's different.
Technically, yes.
I think that they had a really great home field buff.
Well, if people want to say that playing from home, while obviously there's a lot of psychological problems about being trapped inside for months on end that I know Raz is making a face about, but at least like I understand that, but at least like in front of a crowd, like the level of nerves and the stage shaking and those other things you hear people talking about, you don't have to deal with, and it's closer to like your solo queue experience. I do think is a home field buff, but I'd also say like T1 got their own home field buff being in Korea, even if it was like you said in Busan and not Seoul.
Not a lot of the conversations were like there are like good topics about not having white noise in your. I don't know. Once again, I would love the transparency. I really wish Riot had done this. Like, hey, do they have white noise in their ears? Because sometimes they can do fabricated white noise. Like, if there isn't, then okay, like that's good to know because it's not necessary. But also that is an advantage to not have like this blaring noise in your ear. You know, like just like there are a few things that I wish that we could have known, but that's fine, right? But yes, like the factor of not being able to leave your house for months is definitely not, I would deem, a home field advantage because like they don't get the negatives of what's it called, sleep deprivation if you travel just literally like an hour or two to just Korea. You would be able to go there, enjoy yourself a little bit more. The food's somewhat similar in a way, kind of depends. But, like they definitely, if life was more normal, would appreciate going to Korea. And if life was more normal, yeah, just staying at home is pretty OP. But like for them, it was not good. And also, no, they would have a barber that wouldn't fuck up their hair like they were doing at their own establishment, guys. Their hair was fucked up. Like,
is it like how Mark's hair has been lately, or?
Oh no! Don't do it to him.
My hair is fine.
Honestly, that's why the last Blame game struggled so much. If you go look at his hair in the last Blame game, I think our completion rates are getting hit really hard by that. People are too together.
So the other take I'm going to give is that the T1 saltiness at losing is good for the scene.
I think it is.
This is tough for me because I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this. I was pretty disturbed by how much like racial conversation I saw happening at this international event.
Well, to be clear, I'm not talking about the fans. I'm saying T1 themselves. Polt being salty, Faker being salty, and not giving any credit to his competition, and saying like no one impressed me. You know, like that stuff. I would say, while not professional, you could argue, or you know, like, oh, you should give credit. You should not say that. You should own your mistakes. Like, I think it's kind of funny that they're so fucking salty, and when they go back to Worlds, and if RNG's there and they play each other, it's just better storylines.
And another thing too is like, you know how we're pretty lucky in the West that all social media accounts are just at the end of the day, like it feels like it's run by 16-year-old like memers that just interact with everything. I think it's good because like the end goal is that you have at least some you know, relatable entity that can ease the minds of your audience, or like
Portillo
kind of
confirmed relatable entity.
There it is. But what RNG did, I felt like after the finals, their account was great. Like it gave credit to T1, said their players were amazing. It interacted with the T1 LOL account and saying, hey, you know, GG's, blah, blah, blah. Because, you know, the fans certainly are definitely rabid at each other for the reasons that we were talking about. And I felt like it was good sportsmanship for the team to do that. T1, no, didn't do it. The T1 LOL account, I think, is a lot more, you know, the typical Eastern
PC,
yeah, PC stuff where it just doesn't do anything other than push the graphics and all that stuff. The actual T1 account, not T1 LOL, actual T1 account is a lot more of that because it's supposed to be the Western face, and so because they have a lot of other Western entities, but it doesn't interact with it. Just doesn't. So I thought that was pretty bad. I understand that the Korean fans are pretty pissed right now, and so them giving credit to their opponent maybe wouldn't go off too well, but they absolutely should, because the combination of that plus what we saw from the actual T1 players and coach is just, it feels really poor sportsmanship is what it came out. I think the only positive was literally Joe Marsh on his own account saying GG's for RNG for running it back to back. Like, that was good on him. I would definitely like to hear more from, you know, the entities that actually have like a pretty far outreach to the Korean community, like their social accounts. So please, that's just for them. If they see this, which they won't.
Let's get the last caller.
All right, last one. Blaze through this.
Blaze through it. Hackleberry,
Blaze
thank you. Harry Nguyen, thank you. And so many things, thank you. Aetiss is here. Aetiss, where are you calling from?
New York City.
New York City. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So my take is that viewership is dropping because casters and content creators don't understand how to tell good storylines.
Okay, so first off, fuck you. No, what? No, first off, when you say viewership is dropping, are you specifically talking about LCS?
Yes.
Okay. So,
well, did you also know that while the peaks were up for MSI, the averages were down this year as well?
I did not know that. But
I guess anyone in the call.
Yeah, I knew that. Only
okay.
because like 30 minutes ago I searched it up and I found that, so I was better.
Okay, so let's go ahead and elaborate. So you think the storytelling casters and content creators, which are the three of us and more, do not know how to tell good storylines. Explain.
Yeah. So I want to go back to, I started watching esports back in StarCraft 2 when Huck and Idra were like the prominent figures in North America.
Yes.
And when I was watching them, I didn't really give a shit. They didn't bring anything to the table. It wasn't until MLG where IM MVP and Nesty came along. They were the best Terran, and Nesty was the professor, where he kind of built units and always knew the perfect amount of units to build to defend every attack. That brought storyline to everything. There was Liquid Hero. Day9 actually made a video where he likened Hero to Bisu and his playstyle in StarCraft 1 from when he flipped the entire play win percentage in PvZ around in one tournament. And that really brought like a storyline and something to tell the tale of that player. In League of Legends, CLG versus TSM, I didn't really give a shit what I was watching. It wasn't until Azubu Blaze came over. I learned from them. I learned on Mad Life. He was the god of Blitzcrank. He won games purely through his hooks. And I followed him up until 2016, 2017 when he was on CJ Aetiss. Even High he was called like the shot caller. It's like a role, but for him it was a moniker, and it really told his story. And right now, there is no story in the LCS for any player. Like, I think Bjergsen, he succeeded in spite of not having a name, and Doublelift also succeeded in spite of not having a name. But there really isn't like a story to tell for any player.
Oh my god. Okay. So
wait, do you want to go first, or can I throw a little joke in?
Well, you could throw your little joke in, but I have a lot to talk about, even just from the premise of this stuff. Go ahead, Mark.
So the funniest thing to me is, and this is tongue in cheek, but you're talking about storytelling and narrative, and Twitch chat was 1,000% lost on where the fuck you were going with this point.
No. I think Twitch chat was mostly lost on. Okay, so for me...
No, I know. Go ahead, Travis.
Sorry, Aetiss. I got to first off blow you up for your SC2 stuff. Because
I didn't laugh at Mark's joke.
I got into esports through SC2, and Huck and Idra were huge fucking names. Do you remember the hallucinate meme where like
GG, you know,
Idra-
we're
He surrendered,
Yeah.
right?
Yes,
He surrendered before the battle.
Yes,
Yeah.
Idra surrendered upon seeing Huck's, what were they, Void Rays or whatever, because then they
Yeah.
were actually hallucinated.
You
Like,
know those
that
were
shit was
halluc, right?
amazing. What are you talking about? Huck and Idra were huge, and then also, okay, wasn't Huck also on TL at the time? And then
Yeah.
yeah,
Like,
and
I
so
didn't
you
like
also
Huck.
had the
I didn't
TL
like
EG.
Jimio. I didn't like Chef. These players, they weren't like exciting to me. And people are more likable to players than teams. When you say like, oh, this team is on a 5-game win streak, that's like a fragile storyline because as soon as they lose, that storyline is gone. Whereas if you say like, oh, the unkillable Demon King is playing, like that's gonna live on if whether he wins or loses. It's gonna become a meme. Like the insect, all these like iconic moves in League are like a storyline in a way.
I won.
I think it's
I wasn't
weird, too.
done yet. CLG and TSM, which you also said you didn't care about until like Mad Life showed up, those were like crazy OG rivalries that basically form the foundation for Western League of Legends stuff. Like it's wild to me. Like this is the thing. I am super down to have a conversation about storytelling. And I agree that there's actually a lack of storytelling. I think there's some bigger reasons for it that you might be missing, but it's just weird to me the premise that you're going with where you're talking about Huck and Idra, who were two of the biggest names in StarCraft esports and like people really cared about, and also CLG TSM, which basically like created League of Legends esports in the West in some sense alongside Fnatic, I guess.
Yeah.
Like it's just weird.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, even the point you just made, talking about a 5-game win streak, but then comparing it to a player's name, like those aren't even the same narrative beats that you're talking about. Like a win streak and who a player's identity is, like I don't even understand how those are comparable topics. And then to the point, you just like dismissed Travis's point, some of the biggest beats of the entire scene's history for these two different games. Like I think you enjoy a kind of story, and that's fine. But to say that everyone is getting it wrong because we haven't given a nickname to every single player or something, it seems like the crux of the takeaway. The God Blitzcrank or Unkillable Demon King, or I don't know. You watch the Smash doc and you like the robot, for Mewtwo King. I don't know.
But let's dig in a little bit to the areas where, like, you are not wrong to say that there are these other. You mentioned storylines that I think were relevant, right? Like Nestea was incredibly dominant for quite some time. I think Marine King, also one of those players that was up there during that time. Like there were a ton of these players who were very good and consistently won and always made it to the finals. I think StarCraft had the benefit of being a single player esport where you could basically do that because you had a lot of big names that would show up at the end because you just had these individuals playing, whereas you don't really have that in League of Legends. The areas where like you mentioned Bjergsen and Doublelift had crazy fucking storylines to the extent that like Doublelift in the West, I think, is basically like the protagonist of League of Legends esports. I know, Travis Doublelift, blah, 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 but like the amount of crazy shit that he went through, it just personally and professionally is wild. Who else has any fucking storyline that gets anywhere close to that? Like, I don't want to. I'm not going to go on rant 500,000 about the turnover in the league, but
it's
like
literally the same point I have. So
it's like you can't like we fucking rotate players in and out of the league so frequently that we never have a chance for any of them to like build up any story.
Well,
like, do you want me to talk about how fucking Stixay is coming back again from being a coach to like competing on Golden Guardians and like, wow, that's a fucking crazy story. It's just like it's the reason why this league was criticized for so long for just making every single thing about Doublelift and Bjergsen was because it was so hard to find any other players who could consistently be good, consistently end up in the finals, and who could consistently remain in the league at a time where teams are constantly looking for who the best player from Europe is that they can import over here for one or two splits.
Yeah, like basically that same point where I think there are going to be some players in the league right now that you have stories that you can kind of build off of because there's a form of consistency. Like Fudge Factor is like something that right now is running with Fudge. Blabber has also been around for long enough to like have memes around him and a name because Blabber's Crabber is like what Big is saying, right? easy. Like some of the players that have been around for long enough on a successful squad have some form of legacy and identity around them. But then you go around every other team and it's just a new face every time, and every time you're having to rebuild. It's fine by me if a team like CLG is a good example, or Golden Guardians or Dignitas, like they're building new players, and so you just kind of have to build from the ground up on who they are as a player, their identity. If you like, hey, put them on broadcast enough times, they're a little bit green and may not be able to communicate well enough broadcast, like the entire process. But then if you work toward that and then they're gone the next split because the team TSM just is like, oh, we wanted to develop this talent, but next split we want to do something new. Then you're like, what are we building towards, guys? You're not helping your own organization as you are not helping the league. And I do agree that there are ways we can refine storytelling to be a lot more fun and clippable, in depth, like different looks. Like there's always going to be a different way to tell stories. But I felt like we were doing a good job for the nonsense that was happening around us. And it's not just like a full-on defense. I just think that's the biggest issue, is that teams need to find an ultimate direction, which is why I was actually pleasantly surprised with FlyQuest when they were sending all their players to Korea. I was like, wait a minute, you guys aren't changing anybody? No one? Or 100 Thieves, like, wow, you guys are keeping to an idea, and maybe by the end of the year it's like a player is gone or something, but at least you're keeping to something. It's crazy.
So here's what I'll say is, anyone who talks to me behind the scenes knows I'm super critical of of storytelling of the products I work on and the people I work with. Like everyone knows I'm critical. You just got to make good points. That's my only problem with the take is not the direction of the take, but the points made about like the Messiah, like the 9-man sleep is a play. Like we title all these plays. Danny's play is now the dream, the pentakill. Like the big plays when they happen are going to get immortalized. People are going to start coming up with names for them. Like that's not the hard part. When a player is an all-time great, it's fucking easy to tell stories about them. The hard parts are the less interesting people. To Travis's point about Double F and Bjerg and like all those times, like it was easy to tell stories about them. And I think that's the area that I think there's more to be done currently, is like, okay, what do you do when you don't have a GOAT currently playing in your league? Like who's the GOAT right now? I guess Bjerg came back, so it's a little bit easier, but like, it's like, how are you going to start building up the other people who are not yet like winning titles all over the place? Thank God EG started doing something, because it's very easy to tell the Pentakill Prince, which is what Danny's nickname is right now. Like, I don't know if the caller is just not familiar with the storylines going on right now. But like these are storylines that are being developed. JoJo as the hottest talent to come out of the league in years is something that like I've been hyping up on my Twitter nonstop for all of MSI.
Hey, and another thing is literally every time he gets a tweet, which is just another way of saying that he's gonna shit on something. It's like, it's put on broadcast and blasted. Like that type of stuff we want to run with. And
what's funny is like the broadcasting folks received criticism for hyping up JoJo and Danny so much. Like at MSI, people were like, oh, they like really overhyped them, they talk too much about them, etc. We took calls about it on Hotline League. So here's one area where I will Aetiss, I will agree with this. Here, I will on the record say I am probably worse at story building around players than I used to be. I have less enthusiasm and excitement for it, and like less creativity for it. I will own part of that. I think I will say that is a bit of a symptom of the fact that it is, in my mind, really difficult to get excited for players these days, because I just don't know if they're going to be in the league. Think about how much effort was put into building up Summit's storyline over the course of this split. He received MVP. We'll probably never fucking talk about him ever again. Like it is just, it's really difficult because I want to like rally myself and be like, I used to say and firmly believe, and I still do, but to a lesser extent, but like I used to say, like, what is my primary goal in the league, especially in the early days? It was to help people become fans of these other players. It is part of the reason I started doing State of the League way back in the day. It's like, I cared a shit ton about Idra and Huck, even if you didn't, and I wanted people to care a lot about the League of Legends players, and so I felt like that was a huge responsibility that I had as I was creating content around all these people and something I wanted to do. And it is just like way harder to have that enthusiasm these days when you have players like rubber banding on boomeranging out of the league constantly, when you have teams that make changes so rapidly, and it's just a lot harder to build that. So like I don't want to just say, oh, you know, it's everybody else's fault but the content creators and the casters, but I will say that like it is, I miss the old days because I felt like it was a lot easier to do this type of stuff back then, and I would love a return to, like, I hope Danny and JoJo play on EG for a long period of time and that they remain competitive, because if like fucking Danny's on Dig next year competing for 7th, you know, it's just like it's gonna feel really, really fucking bad.
Yeah, I mean, like, another example is just that, like, I will never let my perception, and this is always going to be a battle because people will think one way or another, right? I will never let my perception of whether I think a player is going to be here long term impact if I'm going to, like, talk about that player. Like, if I think that Summit's not
Impact's
going
been
to
here
be
for a
here...
long time.
Huh?
I said Impact.
You made a joke. Oh, yeah, you're right. Because Impact's been here for a while, right? And maybe Summit's going to be here for a long time. Like, I looked at the new change from TSM and having, you know, losing Kai Duo. I committed on the Kai Duo story until they fucking booted him on week 3. Like, and then I was like, it's like, now Maple's in. Do I think firmly, if you ask me, do I think Maple will be here next year? Fuck no, I don't think so. I will still sell the story, like, because it would be a huge miss otherwise. If they actually kept him, if he stayed here, like, that would be a humongous miss. So I'm going to still talk the story if he is the story of the team. But it is a problem. It's a huge problem. So, you know, I think the team's got to start identifying it. Go for it.
Final thing I'll ask for the caller, Aetiss. What's the thing that you think, like, you want to see it do? Because the main suggestion I heard from you was, like, more monikers and nicknames, it sounded like, for Unkillable Demon King and some of, like, the Mad Life Blitz and the Messiah and, like, you know, the Hook God and, like, these kinds of... Is it just, like, coming up with, like, flashy monikers for people?
So what I will say is that I haven't watched MSI at all. I've only watched local guys with the Reddit threads and stuff. But yeah, people are more drawn or more easily drawn to players, whether like you play that role or they'll be drawn to it somehow. And then they're more easily drawn to players than they are to teams. And so once you lead them to the player, they'll join the team. I like the player, and then I will become a fan of the team over time. But yeah, that's exactly what I would suggest. Like, if Danny's the Pinnacle Prince, like you guys said. If he went to TSM, if he went to C9, if he went to any other team, if it was Dardok who switched like to 7 different teams, I would still watch it because of Dardok. Or I'd still watch Danny if he changed teams. Once he has a name, wherever he goes, it's gonna be like you'll follow him. And that's the only thing I'll say.
We need to do a collab with Marvel so we can get all these players superhero names, is what I'm guessing. Mark, you're muted.
I said they all need their origin movie. That's the problem. What's the origin movie for Ablaze Olive? The Bench Warmer. That's his nickname. He fucking warmed that bench for years, and he got his shot now in Golden Guardians. Boom!
I hate that.
And now he's going to lose it.
The Bench Warmer.
Pride Stalker's buddy.
Pride Stalker, no longer here.
Blaze Olive's moniker is Dead Man Walking, because Golden Guardians are waiting for Ole's green card. All right. Aetiss, thank you so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out before we say goodbye to the end of the show?
Shout out to Grubhub and Alienware. And my favorite LCS segment was the Jat and Mark, I think, mock champion draft, but that went away after like 2017. And that's what I miss all the most.
They didn't do a good job of storytelling, I'll tell you that. Aetiss, thank you so much. Sorry if we came after you. Honestly, it was really fun to hear you bring up StarCraft folks that I really enjoyed. It was just funny because we're obviously on opposite ends of the spectrum over there. But thank you so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
All right.
I mean, the overall point that players will stick better than team narratives is like largely true. People enjoy players more. I just think the points that he picked to illustrate that was not helped by his actual, like his case was not helped by his actual points. You could not be guilty of a crime, but also incriminate yourself horribly. And that's kind of how this felt to me, where it's like the point you're making is fine, but to then say, "Oh, I didn't watch any MSI, by the way," is like, how are you even going to say if the storylines were good or not if you don't even fucking watch?
I can
He's
definitely
mostly talking
take
about
his
LCS,
point.
to be fair.
I can definitely
I know.
take his point and run with it. I think the thing that hurt him the most was that his major points were not. He didn't understand the perspective of the community at the time. He didn't understand the perspective of the community at the time in season 2. Like, I was drawn to CLG and Curse because of their personalities, but he didn't.
Yeah, the Saints, the Voids, the Hot Shots, the Regis. Yeah.
He wasn't drawn to. He didn't even. I don't think he knew what Pentakilled Prince was. Where I feel like that was the main thing you'd see from the fan signs going into the finals event, like the day after, because he got that pentakill again.
Yeah.
So I think if he had understood the narratives beats at the time and how the fan sentiment was, it would go far. Also, like, I would come out and say that, stories are better received if we have like more flashier segments and like more committed things. I would agree with that. Like, I think content could be better, but yeah, he didn't.
Hell
go in
yeah,
that
it could be
direction.
better.
He didn't go in that direction, so I was like, okay, we're just going.
Hotline League could be better.
The other day, I was watching one of my favorite content creators, and he put out this new 5-minute show where it's all about being positive. The fucking production on that shit was garbage. And then I looked in the comments, and there was another content creator in the space who was offering to help him level up his production, and then he just replied and spit in his face.
He did spit in his
and
face.
Said, "I don't want TGI to help me with my show. I don't need you."
If I don't see it on the camera, did he really spit, Raz? Commit.
All right. This has been a fun episode, though. Let's do some shout-outs. Mark Zimmerman, what do you want?
Nothing.
Ooh.
Dear God. Please promote Blame Game, Mark.
Check out the Blame Game coming out this week. I've decided on one of the topics. It's going to be about this Mickey Mouse ass tournament that just happened, as I've heard people call it.
Mickey Mouse ass tournament. Raz, what do you want to shout out and plug?
Hello, my name is Raz, and I have this thing called R&R now. If you haven't seen the first episode, go ahead and watch it.
Wait, is that Resin Refresh?
RNR.
Okay.
Yeah. Raz in review. Anyways, episode 1 came out a little later. I think episode 2 will come out in 2 or 3 days from now. It'll just be about the finals. I haven't really figured out the topic because I just need to rewatch the finals. The first watch I did was just like as a fan, just watching, seeing what happened. Second watch will just be like, what are the actual takeaways of this event for me? So that'll happen. Follow me on Raz LOL on my Twitch, on my Twitter, and yeah, that'll be it for me.
People want to know where to find your YouTube video.
All right, let me see if I can find it.
Trying to help you here. Because people in the chat
Alright.
keep saying, I'm trying to find this. And they're like, you don't have a link to it on your Twitter. You don't have anything.
I had to scroll pretty far to find it, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I mean, for me, the viewership is not even anywhere close to what I care about with this video. But I think it is important to bring it up. Do I have the ability to link on your account here, on your here, on your...
If you're still a mod, I know I
yeah, there you go.
Good.
There you go. Boom.
Fantastic. It's in the
This is
Twitch chat. Anybody listening to the podcast or the VOD, you guys are
Good luck.
all right, for me, we have Resin Refresh back tomorrow. I mean, we did one episode last week. I don't think many people caught it, but I think it's because Genshin was in the quiet time. I'm going to stick around on stream and try to get Mommy Elan for a little bit. So feel free to stick around if you're watching
Mommy
live.
who?
Elan.
Don't worry about it, all right?
All right. You know, a fan of Mummy Milkers, I understand.
All right.
I feel like
let's end
normally
the show,
Mark is
Travis.
the one I'm more worried about. Raz has made more questionable comments on this show.
We're doing a waifu tier list this week after Resident Refresh, by the way.
Wait, I thought we already did a tier list.
We only did a tier list for most fun so far. We haven't done a waifu tier list.
Well, we might. What time do you want to do it? Because I'm got something at 3.
Wednesday, sometime.
Oh, when? Okay, we'll figure it out.
All right, yeah, bye.
All right, everyone. This has been Hotline League. Goodbye.